Chapter 1105. As more and more Ba Gue and other cultivators appeared, Ingli hid his identity. However, his method of hiding was not very good. As long as the cultivators looked carefully, they would still be able to find out who he was. However, in this place where many cultivators gathered, very few people would risk being misunderstood by using their divine will to find out who they were. Obviously, Ingli did not hide his identity, but he did not want to cause trouble. Naturally, Lu Ping would not deliberately expose Ingli's identity to attract others' attention. As more and more Ba Gue gathered and moved in the same direction, Lu Ping gradually separated from the 5 peacock women and moved alone with Xiang Shiping. From the people Lu Ping had seen, he could see that most of the cultivators going to the land of 5 elements this time were early Dharma adepts, but there were also many mid-Dharma adepts. Lu Ping even sensed that there were a few hidden auras of great cultivators, but Lu Ping could not find their specific location. However, there was not a single core forging adept among them. Lu Ping had asked Xiang Shiping the reason, and only then did he know that the effect of condensing the inner yuan in the land of 5 elements was more targeted at Dharma adepts, and most of them were at the early Dharma adepts. For core forging adepts, it was not obvious at all. Moreover, breaking through the encirclement of the land of 5 elements by Mara was a dangerous task, and core forging adepts were a bit of a burden. Sometimes, cultivators could be seen riding core forging stage Ba tortoises. However, whenever such a cultivator appeared, the nearby Ba tortoises would collectively stop and the cultivator would tactfully let the Ba tortoise go. Some people would even explain that they were using core forging stage Ba tortoises to find the location of the 5-element tortoise vault. Without the guidance of the adepts, these cultivators would either fly in the air with the group of adepts or find a tortoise to borrow a seat from the guard. Some people even fought over this. After all, the defense of the adepts could be said to be the best in the world. In addition to their huge size, each adepts and the Dharma adepts were equivalent to a giant fortress, and they were the best choice for breaking through the formation. The cultivators who wanted to enter the land of 5 elements had to choose a adepts as their temporary partner. Firstly, they wanted to find the land of 5 elements, and secondly, they wanted to use the unparalleled defense of the adepts to break through the formation. There was only Lu Ping on Xiang Shiping's back, which naturally attracted many people to hitch a ride. There were also some cultivators with bad intentions who wanted to drive Lu Ping away and occupy Xiang Shiping's adepts. The friar laughed and said, "It really is Brother Lu. I am Su Jin of Purple Sun Palace. I wonder if Brother Lu has heard of me from 6th Junior Brother?" Lu Ping suddenly understood and smiled. "So it is Brother Su of Zhongchong Sword. Why, is Brother Su also going to the land of 5 elements?" Su Jin smiled helplessly. "This is all because of the trouble you guys caused in the East Sea 3 years ago. Qin Shijun of Crystal Palace was the first to pass the first Thunder Trial and advance to the mid-Dharma stage. The disciples of the other Holy Lands also advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, but it put a lot of pressure on us. It wasn't easy for us to pass the first Thunder Trial, but it caused our training to become unstable. Who knows, we might have to go to the land of 5 elements this time." Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. None of the direct disciples of the Holy Lands were easy to deal with. Qin Shijun of Crystal Palace was the first to start the 3rd-generation disciples advancing to the mid-Dharma stage. In just 3 years, more than one of the direct disciples from the Holy Lands had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage. This Su Jin was only the 3rd direct disciple of Purple Sun Palace, but he had already passed the first Thunder Trial. Lu Ping asked Xiang Shiping, "Brother Xiang, Brother Su is one of the 6 swords of Purple Sun Palace. I would like to invite Brother Su to go to the land of 5 elements with me. I wonder if Brother Xiang would agree?" Xiang Shiping said nonchalantly, "Since you are a direct disciple of Purple Sun Palace, your abilities will naturally not be weak. It's up to you." Lu Ping immediately smiled at Su Jin and said, "Brother Su, if you have not found a suitable sky-dominating divine turtle, would you be willing to join forces with me to go to the land of 5 elements?" Su Jin smiled and said, "Of course, I dare not." The surrounding cultivators who were waiting to watch a good show were all disappointed. They watched as Su Jin landed on the back of the sky-dominating divine turtle that Lu Ping was on and laughed with Lu Ping. From time to time, he would even talk to Xiang Shiping about something. Many of the cultivators were secretly resentful. That Lu Tianping was just doing it for fun. When he saw that the person who came was a direct disciple of Purple Sun Palace, he immediately went up to him. However, some people immediately reacted. Lu Tianping? The one who was born in the North Sea cultivation world, and whose level of attainment was almost unrivaled among the third generation of cultivators in the overseas cultivation world? It seemed that this person was quite famous among the third generation of cultivators in the cultivation world. After hearing about Lu Ping's reputation, many people looked at Lu Ping with much less disdain. With Lu Ping's ability, he could be on equal footing with a direct disciple of Purple Sun Palace like Su Jin. Brother Su, how is Brother Xie doing? Su Jin naturally knew that Lu Ping would definitely ask about Xie Tianyang, so he smiled and said, "Sixth junior brother is very impressive now. The reason why I was able to pass the first thunder trial in such a hurry has a lot to do with him. Among the six of us, sixth junior brother is the youngest, but his level of attainment has skyrocketed. He is already at the peak of the early Dharma stage and is only one step away from the mid-Dharma stage. He will soon surpass me, the third senior brother, and I have no choice but to pass the thunder trial first. I can't let sixth junior brother surpass me so easily, can I?" Lu Ping said sincerely, "Brother Xie is a genius, so it makes sense that his current level of attainment is so high." Su Jin agreed and said, "That's right. This kid usually runs around the cultivation world and doesn't spend much time on training, but his level of attainment is not slow at all. A few days ago, he even teamed up with the Empyrean walkers of the spirit beast taming sect to severely injure the 7th and 8th floor masters of the Nine Xian Tower. You can say that his level of attainment and reputation have not been neglected at all." Naturally, Lu Ping had heard of the 9 masters of the Nine Xian Tower. They were also the cream of the crop among the third generation of cultivators in the cultivation world and were one of the 9 direct disciples of the Nine Xian Tower. The spirit beast taming sect naturally had more than one Empyrean walker, but the one who was on good terms with Xie Tianyang was naturally Sang Yu. It seemed that the two of them had made great progress in their cultivation, as they were able to easily defeat the direct disciple of the Nine Xian Tower. Lu Ping could not help but ask curiously, how did the two of them get into a fight with the direct disciples of the Nine Xian Tower? Su Jin shook his head and said, "I'm not too sure about that. It seems that the sworn sister of the spirit beast taming sect's Empyrean walker was bullied, and since sixth junior brother is on good terms with the heavenly walker, the two of them teamed up to avenge her." Just as Su Jin finished speaking, he felt a flash of murderous intent from Lu Ping. Su Jin slapped his forehead and said, "Oh, I forgot. Brother Lu, when the 3 of you were still core forging cultivators, you even dared to fight the 4th elder of the Tima people. That's a friendship of life and death." Then he said seriously, "But Brother Lu, the 2 masters of the Nine Xian Tower are not to be underestimated. If 6th junior brother and the heavenly walker fought, then so be it. I don't think the Nine Xian Tower will say anything about it. But if Brother Lu makes a move as well, regardless of the outcome, I'm afraid the Jinling sect that Brother Lu is in will be in trouble." Lu Ping nodded, indicating that he understood. However, it was not because of their friendship, but because of Sang Yu's sworn sister, Qing Hu. Qing Hu was currently working for him, so if the 2 masters of the Nine Xian Tower were to make things difficult for her, it would naturally be the same as making things difficult for Lu Ping. Moreover, Qing Hu might have been put in a difficult position for some reason, and this matter might have something to do with what Lu Ping had instructed them to do. Chapter 1106. Naturally, there was more than one path to the land of 5 elements. Even so, as they got closer and closer to the land of 5 elements, the huge team had gathered more than 20 ba tortoises. Even though each ba tortoise had shrunk in size, it was still huge, like a flowing mountain range on the sea. The cultivators riding on the giant tortoises were bored to death. Some of the more famous cultivators simply began to organize various activities, such as exchanging cultivation experiences, exchanging some precious treasures, or talking about the secrets of the cultivation world to make friends with each other. After a few more days, a thin layer of multicolored mist gradually rose from the surface of the sea, and the yuan qi between heaven and earth became denser and denser. Everyone knew that the land of 5 elements was close at hand, so they stopped all kinds of activities and began to make their own preparations. After another day, The 5 elemental energy on the surface of the ocean grew even thicker, and the 5-colored mist grew even thicker. Even the divine sense of the cultivators was affected. Although Bague could still rely on his bloodline to determine the direction, his team, which had been in an orderly state, was now in a state of disarray due to the divine sense attack. Lu Ping and Su Jin sat cross-legged on the Ba tortoise's back, one on the left and the other on the right. They each circulated their qi, ready to give their opponent a fatal blow at any time. It was at this moment that a few exclamations suddenly came from the fog in front of them on the right. It was closely followed by a deafening roar and cultivators' curses. At the same time, it was mixed with Emo Luo's roar. Su Jin's eyes widened. A ray of divine light that was as sharp as a flying sword suddenly sank into the surrounding 5 elements fog. Then, with this ray of light as the center, all the 5 elements fog within a radius of 3 feet retreated. The ray of light shot out to a distance of over 1,000 feet, forming a space of over 1,000 feet that was not shrouded by the fog. At the same time, Lu Ping slowly opened his eyes, and a cyan light flashed. There was not the slightest change in the surroundings, but Lu Ping's gaze was moving, as if the surrounding fog could not stop his gaze. At this moment, Lu Ping and Su Jin said, almost in unison, "It's coming." The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Almost at the same time, 2 beams of sword light rose from the turtle back on Xiang Shiping's left and right sides respectively, and disappeared into the colorful mist. Desperate screams came from the fog. He could vaguely see that the sword light on the left had turned into a sky full of sword qi, like raging waves, while the sword light on the right was a vast expanse of whiteness, like an endless ice field. Bague continued to move forward, breaking through the colorful fog more than 1,000 feet away. The place where the two of them had killed their enemies finally revealed a clue. On the left side of the sea were the dismembered limbs of Mara, while on the right side of the sea, there was an iceberg floating on the sea, with several Mara sealed inside, all of them dead. Good move, Brother Su. Haha, same to you. The appearance of Mara meant that everyone had arrived at the edge of the land of 5 elements. Lu Ping's Jin Yuan revolved, and wisps of heaven and earth Yuan Qi gathered towards him, but Lu Ping's water attribute Jin Yuan was different. As the Zhen Yuan gathered towards him, it also peeled off a trace of blue mist. After a moment, a hazy blue ball of light formed around Lu Ping, which surprised Su Jin. Brother Lu, it seems that your Zhen Yuan is condensed and vigorous, so there is no need for you to come to the land of 5 elements at all? Lu Ping tried to condense the water elemental energy and found that although the water elemental energy was dense, it had little effect on his Zhen Qi. However, the water elemental energy here was very dense. Even if it couldn't be used to condense Zhen Qi, it was still an excellent place to cultivate. Lu Ping chuckled and said, "It was a coincidence that I came to this land of 5 elements during my trip to the South Sea. My original intention wasn't to condense my true essence, but to see the treasures left behind by Taoist Gue. But even if I can't condense my true essence, this place is still an excellent place to cultivate." Su Jin grunted and said, "So that's how it is." A few accidents could not stop Bague's advance at all. During this period, the two of them fought several times, but all they encountered were scattered groups of Mara. At most, there were more than a dozen, and at least a few. They were all low-level Mara, but in the 5 elements mist, they were like fish in water. Even Lu Ping and the others had to deal with them carefully to avoid unexpected failure. At this time, the two of them began to seize the time to cultivate. Although they were only at the periphery of the land of 5 elements, Mara's army was watching, so they had no choice but to be cautious. Sure enough, at this time, Xiang Shiping's deep voice sounded, "Be careful, something is coming from underwater." Just as Xiang Shiping discovered something, Lu Ping and Su Jin also noticed the abnormality in the sea. Xiang Shiping said, "Protect me, don't let them rush up." As soon as he finished speaking, Xiang Shiping's body that had shrunk to more than 30 meters suddenly expanded, all the way to more than 300 meters in size. As his body expanded, the height of his tortoise shell also increased. But at this time, Xiang Shiping's body suddenly sank several meters into the sea, and then a long roar came from under the sea. Xiang Shiping's body suddenly accelerated and began to rush forward. Because of his acceleration, the seawater in front of him was pushed forward by several meters high waves. Previously, Xiang Shiping's speed was extremely fast, but not a single wave was stirred up. Now that he deliberately half-submerged in the sea, the waves he pushed up were only about 30 meters high, forming a wall of water in front of him. But this wall of water was condensed by Xiang Shiping's great power, so its impact was even more ferocious than the hundreds of meters high tsunamis. At this time, a dense series of muffled bangs suddenly came from the bottom of the sea. From the top of the tortoise shell, Lu Ping and Su Jin could feel the slight tremors caused by Xiang Shiping's huge body colliding with the things at the bottom of the sea. The edge where Xiang Shiping's tortoiseshell came in contact with the seawater. Clearly, Emo Luo, who had been hiding at the bottom of the sea, had been smashed and killed by Xiang Shiping's attack. The destructive effect of Xiang Shiping's attack had truly shocked the two of them. Lu Ping sighed again and again. No wonder there was a sect in the South China Sea that once hired a pure young tyrant tortoise as their treasure ship to pass through the central region. With the unparalleled defense of the tyrant tortoise clan, a pure young tyrant tortoise was completely comparable to a treasure ship. At that time, this sect also successfully passed through the Sea of Storms and arrived at the central region. This caused a huge sensation in the cultivation world at that time. Many cultivators rushed from all over the central region just to see how majestic a pure young tyrant tortoise was. Although treasure ships were known as the pinnacle of refining in the cultivation world, to be able to make a pure young tyrant tortoise serve as a treasure ship to pass through the central region, whether it was the shocking effect or the ingenuity of the owner, it could be regarded as unprecedented. This matter had caused a lot of shock among the major sects in the South China Sea. Many large sects also tried to contact the tyrant tortoise, hoping to pay a certain price to be used as a transportation tool between the South China Sea and the central region. Unfortunately, a pure young tyrant tortoise was something that could only be encountered by chance. The reason why this sect was able to invite a pure young tyrant tortoise back then was due to a favor owed by a cultivator of the previous generation. Furthermore, this was the only time this could happen. The other sects naturally did not dare to have any ideas about a pure young tyrant tortoise, but a great cultivator tyrant tortoise could still be found in the South China Sea. However, until now, no one had been able to succeed again. As Xiang Shiping went deeper and deeper into the land of five elements, he encountered more and more Mara. Many Mara avoided the collision at the bottom of the sea and began to climb up the tortoise shell. Often, before they could show their heads, they would be hit by the sword chi of Lu Ping and Su Jin and slowly sink to the bottom of the sea. At the same time, there were also Mara taking the opportunity to attack from the fog in all directions. However, with the waves pushed by Xiang Shiping in front of them, Lu Ping and Su Jin could only focus on dealing with the Mara that was coming from both sides. Boom! The entire tortoise shell shook violently. Xiang Shiping, who was originally moving forward, suddenly slowed down. Then, he began to move forward again, but it seemed to be much more strenuous. The tsunami of more than 100 feet in front of him also fell back because of the sudden decrease in speed of Xiang Shiping. More than 10 Mara of different sizes crossed the water wall and attacked the tortoise shell, but Lu Ping separated a torrent of sword light from his body and killed more than half of these 10 Mara, while the rest fled in confusion. This huge tremor almost caused Lu Ping and Su Jin to lose their footing. The two of them communicated listlessly for a while, and knew that Xiang Shiping had encountered a strong enemy at the bottom of the sea. Su Jin shouted, "Brother Xiang, force him up." As soon as he said this, Xiang Shiping's body suddenly appeared in front of him. Waves splashed in front of him, and 2 blood shura were thrown up from the bottom of the sea by Xiang Shiping. At the same time, there was another muffled sound from the bottom of the sea. Obviously, there was another blood shura fighting with Xiang Shiping at the bottom of the sea. Lu Ping and Su Jin were the first to attack the 2 blood shura. Now, whether it was the thin water-flowing sword, the blood-orange sword, or the shapeless aqua sword, Lu Ping's abilities were all first Calamity Spirit treasures. Although he had not advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, his abilities had already increased greatly. Su Jin was wielding a flying sword as a spirit treasure, and he himself was a mid-Dharma swordsman, so his attacks were even more powerful. With the two of them working together, the two Bloodshura were actually unable to withstand more than 10 attacks. One of them was decapitated by the shapeless aqua sword, while the other was sliced in half by Su Jin's flying sword. The two of them looked at each other and smiled, feeling that they were working well together. Without the two Bloodshura blocking the way, the remaining Bloodshura at the bottom of the sea could no longer stop Xiang Shiping's attack. The previous feeling of being unable to move was instantly gone, and Xiang Shiping once again rushed forward at high speed. At this moment, from the right side where Su Jin was, there was a loud rumbling sound coming towards them. It seemed that another tyrant tortoise was also rushing towards them. Su Jin shouted, "Fellow Taoist over there, be careful not to bump into him." At the same time, his eyes shone brightly, piercing through the 5 elements fog. He said, "Hey, is that Mr. Wan Yuan of the Yuan family up ahead?" Chapter 1107. The Yuan clan's Mr. Wan? Lu Ping was slightly startled. Then, he heard the rumbling sounds coming towards him suddenly stop, and a voice said, "Who's in front?" "I'm Wan Yuan." Su Jin chuckled and said, "You're a member of the Yuan clan wherever Mara appears." "I am Purple Sun Palace's Su Jin. I wonder who has come from the Yuan clan this time? Is it Brother Feixiang?" The multicolored mist tumbled as a tortoise with a body no smaller than Xiang Shiping broke through the mist and gradually appeared in everyone's field of vision. A middle-aged man with a long beard stood on top of the tortoise's shell. Lu Ping's eyes flashed with a blue light, and he was able to clearly see the man's face. Who else could it be other than Yuan Feixiang's Mr. Wan? Mr. Wan replied, "Fellow Taoists, Su must be joking. The Yuan clan's mission is to fight against the Mara calamity. They have been searching for traces of the Mara calamity in the world of cultivators. But someone with ulterior motives has turned the tables on them. How could fellow Taoist Su make such a joke? I won't hide it from fellow Taoist Su. A direct descendant of the Yuan clan has entered the land of 5 elements. It is young Master Yuan Jinglei." "Yuan Jinglei?" Su Jin pursed his lips as if he didn't care too much about this person. Then, he asked, "So you followed him in?" Mr. Wan shook his head and said, "Young Master Thunderclap is accompanied by a Yuan clan cultivator. This one is acting alone." Su Jin made an understanding expression and then asked, "That's not right. The land of 5 elements is only effective for cultivators of the 5 elements. Wind and ice attribute cultivators can only use the rich worldly energy to cultivate. It doesn't have the slightest effect of condensing true essence. This is especially true for the Yuan clan. What is Yuan Jinglei doing here?" Mr. Wan coughed and said, "Fellow Taoist Su, I've already made it clear that young Master Thunderclap is here because of the Mara calamity." Su Jin chuckled and said, "Do you think I'll believe you?" Mr. Wan's surprised voice sounded at this time. "Why does fellow Taoist Su look so familiar? Could it be that you're also familiar with me?" Lu Ping laughed heartily. "Mr. Wan has a good eye. I am Lu Teping." "Oh," Mr. Wan said as if he had expected this. Then, he asked in amazement, "How did Lu Daoyu also come to the Southern Sea?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "I traveled the world and heard of the hidden tortoise of the 5 elements in the Southern Sea. Why wouldn't I come here to see the hidden tortoise of the 7th patriarch?" At this time, Mr. Wan and his tyrannical turtle arrived in front of Lu Ping and Su Jin. Mr. Wan cupped his hands in salute and said, "I don't know if I can travel with you too. Most of my skills are in the field of spell formations, but I'm not proficient in short-distance combat. If 2 sword cultivators of the present age are to be the main attackers and my spell formations are to support us, our strength will certainly increase." Xiang Shiping had been invited by Lu Ping after all, and Su Jin was merely taking advantage of the situation. Therefore, Su Jin could only look at Lu Ping inquiringly. Mr. Wen's eyes flashed when he saw this. It should be known that the tyrannical turtle clan was usually reluctant to go to the hidden tortoise of their ancestors. The so-called invitation meant that one's strength had to be acknowledged by the tyrannical turtle. Most early Dharma adepts who wanted to be acknowledged by the tyrannical turtle clan would have to work together or find a weak tyrannical turtle that had just entered the Dharma stage. Even Mr. Wan, who was at the mid-Dharma stage, had to choose an early Dharma tyrannical turtle to subdue when he went to the hidden tortoise of the 5 elements. The tyrannical turtle that Lu Ping and Su Jin were riding was at the peak of the Dharma stage, which was comparable to the tyrannical turtle that he had subdued. Mr. One originally thought that this tyrannical turtle had been subdued by Su Jin. After all, Su Jin was at the mid-Dharma stage, and Lu Ping was rumored to be on good terms with Xie Tianyang, the Shaozi sword of the Xiang Palace. Therefore, it made sense that Lu Ping and Su Jin had teamed up. However, it seemed that Su Jin had helped Lu Ping. Could it be that this tyrannical turtle had been subdued by Lu Tianping? It should be known that if a practitioner of the tyrannical turtle clan was at the peak of the early Dharma stage, he would be one of the best among the tyrannical turtles. Although the tyrannical turtle that Mr. One had subdued was also at the peak of the Dharma stage, its body was only about 500 feet long. Even so, Mr. One had put in a lot of effort in the process of subduing this tyrannical turtle. If this tyrannical turtle had really been subdued by Lu Tianping, his strength would be even greater than what Mr. Feixiang had seen. A strange look flashed in Mr. Wen's eyes. Then, he heard Lu Ping say with a smile, "I couldn't have asked for more. I've heard that Mr. Wan is a master of formations. With Mr. Wen's help, we will be like tigers that have grown wings." Su Jin also said with a smile, "Mr. Wan, you flatter me. Brother Lu's swordsmanship is naturally remarkable. How could the title of the Water Sword Immortal be a coincidence? My swordsmanship is far inferior. I can only rely on my cultivation to barely keep pace with Brother Lu." Lu Ping's heart stirred at this time. He deliberately revealed a trace of disappointment and said, "Don't mention the title of the Water Sword Immortal anymore. After witnessing the peerless swordsmanship of the present age, I now know that we are frogs at the bottom of a well." Not only Mr. Wan, but Su Jin also became curious. He opened his mouth and asked, "Brother Lu, have you seen an extraordinary swordsmanship expert? How come you're so dispirited?" Lu Ping sighed and said, "Alas, I was fortunate enough to witness the swordsmanship of the heaven-splitting swordmaster, Xiao Baiyu, from afar on the Qinyuan Island in the East China Sea. I can only sigh at my inferiority." Lu Ping helplessly shook his head and sighed as he said this. He inadvertently observed the expressions of the two men. Sure enough, Su Jin's complexion changed as soon as Lu Ping mentioned Xiao Baiyu's name. His expression turned ashen, and his eyes sparkled with an unforgettable killing intent. Mr. Wan was also aware of this matter. He sucked in a breath of cold air when Lu Ping mentioned Xiao Baiyu's name. Then, he looked at Su Jin. At this time, Lu Ping put on a startled expression. He looked at the two people who didn't look too good and said, "You two, did I say something wrong just now?" Su Jin let out a long sigh and forced a smile on his face. He said, "It's not because of Brother Lu. It's because of Xiao Baiyu's enmity with our sect. This person is a taboo in our sect. Brother Lu, you don't need to pay attention to him." Su Jin first said, "I don't need to pay attention to him." Then he said, "I don't need to pay attention to him." It was clearly a contradiction. Lu Ping would rather believe the first part, but the second part was that if he continued to talk about it, they would become enemies. Mr. Wen didn't want to talk about it in front of Su Jin, and that was enough to show how important Xiao Baiyu was to the cultivators of the Purple Sun Palace. Of course, it was the weight of hatred. The two turtles advanced together. With the addition of Mr. Wan, the strength of the three of them increased greatly. They advanced by leaps and bounds. Even the appearance of the Jade Shura could not stop them. Once again, a Jade Demon led by 3 Jade Shura worked together to break through the encirclement of the 7 Blood Mara. 4 Blood Mara were killed, and 1 Jade Shura was seriously injured. But because Lu Ping had mentioned Xiao Baiyu, Su Jin, who had been very active, became gloomy and silent. They broke through the encirclement of the Jade Mara and the Blood Mara, but they could only kill 3 Blood Shura. But at that moment, Su Jin suddenly turned around and attacked again. She didn't even hesitate to injure a Jade Shura at the risk of being severely injured. If it weren't for Lu Ping's timely reaction, Su Jin might have fallen back into the Demon Shura's encirclement. Su Jin panted. He had been very agitated before, but after the fight, he calmed down a lot. He cupped his hands to Lu Ping and said, "Thank you, Brother Lu." He cupped his hands at Lu Ping and said, "Brother Lu, thank you very much. I lost my composure just now, but it's not because of you. but because Xiao Baiyu really insulted Purple Sun Palace. I was fortunate enough to witness the battle in front of Purple Sun Palace. Xiao Baiyu's arrogance is still vivid in my mind. Unfortunately, that person's talent is comparable to that of a monster. Among the second-generation disciples in the cultivation world at that time, his cultivation surpassed everyone, including the 6 holy lands. I have cultivated diligently in these years, but every time I think of the scene that day, I can't help but feel desperate. I'm afraid that I will never be able to defeat Xiao Baiyu in this life. Lu Ping didn't know what to say. Mr. Wan, who was beside him, said, "Friend Su, you don't have to be like this. According to what I know, Xiao Baiyu only took advantage of the fact that the Laozu of your sect underestimated him and used words to force the Laozu to not attack. That was how he was able to escape after defeating Lu Taiqing and Laozu. Otherwise, if the dozens of Dharma adepts of the Ziyang Palace attacked, even if Xiao Baiyu's powers were extraordinary, how could he have left the Ziyang Palace alive? Furthermore, the first thing that Xiao Baiyu did when he returned to Skyrend was to leave the sect. It was obvious that he was very afraid of the Ziyang Palace." Su Jin shook his head and said softly, "No, this is where Xiao Baiyu's brilliance lies. Skyrend is at most a large sect, and there are only 3 grand adepts, including him. If they defend Skyrend, how can the Ziyang Palace suppress them?" But Xiao Baiyu decisively left the sect and appeared everywhere in the world of practice, but his whereabouts are unknown. With his ability to kill the pure young Laozu, even the Holy Lands are extremely afraid of him. They are afraid that if they suppress Skyrend, they will suffer revenge. This is the real way to protect Skyrend. Lu Ping couldn't help but say, now that Xiao Baiyu has made a high-profile return to Skyrend, then, Su Jian still shook his head and said helplessly, now that Mara's great tribulation is about to come, the other Holy Lands will not agree with the Ziyang Palace suppressing Skyrend. Furthermore, Xiao Baiyu has passed the 3rd Thunder Trial and become a pure Yang. Who knows how strong he is now? Chapter 1108. The 3 men and the 2 tortoises advanced like a hurricane. Even Mara couldn't stop them. They were getting closer and closer to the land of the 5 elements. Suddenly, Lu Ping's divine sense stirred. He stretched out his hand and said, "Stop! Stop!" The 2 tortoises stopped their huge bodies. Not a single splash of water could be heard. The 3 men couldn't help but praise the tyrannical tortoise race's water control technique. Lu Ping was confident that his water control technique wasn't inferior to that of the tyrannical tortoise and the green sea snakes. However, his water control technique was far inferior to that of the water demon race. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Lu Ping carefully gestured for them to keep quiet. Then, he pointed forward. Mr. Wen pondered for a moment. Then, he tapped on a floating formation plate a few times, and a simple array formation took shape. The array formation enveloped the 2 shrunken tortoises while also concealing everyone's aura as much as possible. Mr. Wen's eyes narrowed as he looked at Lu Ping. The 2 tortoises advanced cautiously under Lu Ping's signal. Su Jin's eyes shot 2 sword lights into the multicolored mist. He seemed to have sensed something after a while. Then, he pointed at Lu Ping. He was astonished by Lu Ping's divine sense. 3 miles away, the 5 peacock women had formed a simple formation in accordance with the 5 elements. They were resisting the attacks of several cultivators from different directions. The formation of the 5 peacock women seemed simple. However, each of them possessed the 5 elements. Moreover, their cultivation wasn't low. The 5 elements revolved in a never-ending cycle. Rays of light scattered in all directions. Each ray of light was of 5 different colors. Every time a cultivator was attacked by a magic weapon, the 5 women would control the rays of light. The cultivators would be very afraid. They would withdraw their magic weapons. It seemed as if they were afraid of being hit by the 5-colored rays of light. Even so, there were still some cultivators who were struck by the 5-colored light due to carelessness. Not only were their magic treasures incapable of unleashing any powerful magic techniques, even the cultivators themselves fell down, as though they were drunk on alcohol. However, although the 5-colored rays of light were extremely powerful, the 5 women were still suppressed by the joint attack of the cultivators. The reason was that the cultivators who besieged the 5 women seemed to be very familiar with the 5 elements formation. They could always find the flaws of the formation and restrain it with their own divine abilities. If it weren't for the fact that the 5 women's 5-colored rays of light were too powerful and had the demonic effect of dissolving divine abilities, causing the cultivators who besieged them to be very afraid, the 5 elements formation would have been disintegrated long ago. Of course, another reason why the 5 women were suppressed was that the 5 women's cultivation was uneven. The golden peacock Yang Huajun, who had the highest cultivation, had the strength to suppress Xiang Jingyu. The wood peacock Yang Wanjun was weaker than Yang Huajun. The water peacock Yang Rujuan and the fire peacock Yang Lijun were similar in strength, but weaker than Yang Wanjun. The youngest, Yang Shujun, had just entered the Dharma manifestation stage. On the other side of the battle, the lone eagle Ingli was attacking a masked cultivator in green clothes. However, the masked cultivator in green clothes easily blocked Ingli's attack. It seemed that the masked cultivator didn't care about Ingli's attack at all. Instead, most of his attention was focused on observing the cultivators who were besieging the 5 elements peacock. Ingli was defeated by Lu Ping in one move before. This time, he was looked down upon by Brother Tsing Yi. This only stimulated the resentment in his chest, but he had nowhere to vent it. He could only run around Brother Tsing Yi, exerting the speed of the lone eagle to the extreme. Finally, he got a little attention from Brother Tsing Yi. Noisy. Brother Tsing Yi only snorted coldly. Then, the aura around his body surged. Impressively, he was a mid-Dharma adept. He waved his hand at Ingli. With a slap, Ingli hastily blocked the slap aimed at his face to avoid being humiliated again. However, he was knocked back a few steps in midair by Brother Tsing Yi's thick inner yuan. So he is a mid-Dharma adept. Previously, when Ingli saw that Brother Tsing Yi did not retaliate, he used all his strength. He even forgot about his own defense. However, now that he was knocked back by a single blow, he looked much better. This was because Brother Tsing Yi had already revealed his level of practice. Ingli thought to himself, no wonder I am no match for him. I can't blame myself for this. At this moment, Brother Tsing Yi seemed to have sensed something. He looked into the depths of the 5-colored fog. Suddenly, he whistled and said, "Let's go." Several adepts, along with Brother Tsing Yi, retreated into the depths of the 5-colored fog and disappeared. Ingli heaved a huge sigh of relief. Fortunately, Brother Tsing Yi had retreated on his own. Otherwise, he really would not have the courage to go forward and fight with him. Ingli returned to the front of the 5 peacock ladies. Seeing that Yang Rujuan was unharmed, he heaved a sigh of relief. He turned to look at Yang Huajun and said shamefully, "Big sister." Yang Huajun held out her hand to stop him. Ingli thought that this usually cold and elegant big sister was going to say something to him. He immediately looked up at Yang Huajun. However, he saw that she was looking into the depths of the 5-colored fog, as if she had discovered something. Lu Ping, Su Jin, and Mr. Wen slowly approached the area where the battle was taking place. At this time, the 3 of them had already sensed the situation in the sea in front of them. They were also hesitating about whether or not to intervene in the battle. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the person who dared to kill the 5 princesses of the Peacock royalty, although he did not reveal his true face, was definitely not a nobody. If they were to intervene, it was very likely that the other party would seek revenge. At this time, Lu Ping said in a low voice, "Not good. The other party has discovered us." Brother Tsing Yi and the others quickly retreated into the 5-colored fog. At this time, Lu Ping suddenly shouted, "Are the 5 princesses of the Peacock royalty in front? I am Lu Tianping of the Northern Sea. I have come with Brother Su of the Purple Sun Palace and Mr. Wan of the Yuan family. May I ask if the 5 princesses need any help?" Although Lu Ping had traveled with the 5 ladies, they had deliberately distanced themselves from each other because of Ingli. After entering the 5-colored fog, they lost contact. This time, in order to avoid unnecessary misunderstanding, Lu Ping first revealed his identity. "So it is Brother Lu and the other 2 ladies. Thanks to your arrival, our enemy has been scared away. If the 3 of you are free, can you come with us?" Yang Huajun's cold and clear voice came from the fog. It sounded like a cold pearl falling on a jade plate. Lu Ping gave Su Jin and Mr. Wen a questioning look. Su Jin shrugged indifferently and said, "Everything is decided by Brother Lu." Mr. Wen also smiled and nodded. Tyrannical Turtle immediately moved forward, breaking through the layers of fog. Xiang Jingyu, the tyrannical turtle where the 5 peacock ladies were, gradually became clear in everyone's sight. Su Jian saw the 5 peacock ladies and said with a smile, "There is a legend in the cultivation world that the 5 princesses of the peacock royalty in the Endless Mountain Range are very beautiful. They are rare characters in the cultivation world. Today, I see that they really live up to their reputation. However, I don't know which madman wanted to destroy them. Fortunately, the enemy did not succeed. Otherwise, wouldn't it be a great regret in the cultivation world?" Yang Huajun still had a cold face and replied indifferently, "Brother Su, you flatter me." The murderer came prepared. He must be someone with a high status in the cultivation world. Moreover, the opponent did not use his full strength this time. "I think it was just a test." Lu Ping also smiled at this time and said, "In that case, we can go to the land of 5 elements together. We can take care of each other on the way, and also deter the enemy hiding in the dark." Originally, Lu Ping was just making a casual suggestion out of good intentions. Because if Lu Ping and the others walked together with the 5 peacock ladies, they would definitely lend a helping hand if something happened. At the same time, they would also fall into a dangerous situation. However, in the eyes of Ingli, this act of kindness had a completely different meaning. Without waiting for Yang Huajun to reply, Ingli had already jumped out and said, "I don't think it's necessary. Who knows what you have in mind? You were hiding in the side just now. Could it be that the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind it?" After saying that, he turned to Yang Huajun and said, "Big sister, these 3 people are harboring evil intentions. We must be vigilant." "Io," Su Jin said in a strange tone. "Who is this person? The more I look at him, the more he looks like the lone eagle. This is really a strange thing that shocked the entire cultivation world." The cultivator of the lone eagle actually called the princess of the peacock royalty Big Sister. Is there something wrong with my ears? Or does the beauty of the 5 princesses have the supreme power to subdue the lone eagle? At the side, Lu Ping smiled and said, "Brother Su, please be careful with your words. This Brother Ing is the fiancé of the 3rd princess, Yang Rujuan." "What?" Su Jin had a look of disbelief on his face. It was unknown if he was acting with Lu Ping. He made a fuss and said, "Isn't what I said right? This, how can this be? Have the 2 of you obtained the approval of the peacock royalty? Or is the lone eagle actually going to break the blood oath that he has been guarding for tens of thousands of years?" Su Jin was born in Ziyang Palace. His background was one of the top forces in this world. Naturally, he would not have any fear towards the peacock royalty, the lone eagle, and the like. Only he would dare to say such words without restraint. Or, Su Jin's face revealed a mysterious smile and said, "The 2 of you want to elope with the risk of being hunted down by the 2 clans. Brother Su, don't talk nonsense." Yang Rujuan said anxiously, "How can Brother Ing and I elope, we, 3rd sister?" Yang Huajun interrupted Yang Rujuan's words. He looked coldly at Su Jin and said, "My 3 brothers, the land of 5 elements is not far away. Why don't we go together?" Not eloping? This news was enough. Su Jin and the other 2 looked at each other. Finally, Su Jin laughed and said, "To be able to go with the 5 princesses, we can't ask for more." Ingli looked at Lu Ping and the other 2 who were a step ahead of him and gritted his teeth. Especially when he looked at Lu Ping's back, his face was full of ruthlessness. In the end, he had no choice but to follow behind Lu Ping and the other 2 with the 5 peacock ladies. Chapter 11:09. Along the way, they did not encounter any accidents. Even if Mara appeared, he would not have an easy time under the joint power of these people. Just like that, the 3 tyrant tortoises broke through the 5 elemental mist. Lu Ping immediately felt relaxed, and his divine sense was released from the previous shackles. But then, he discovered that although his divine sense could be extended to its original limit, there seemed to be some abnormalities. When he looked up, he saw that they had already entered a world filled with colorful rainbows. This is the real periphery of the 5 elements tortoise vault. The colorful fog is just the protective layer of the 5 elements tortoise vault. Not only can it block Mara outside, but it can also confuse some cultivators of the human and demon clans who are not led by our tyrant tortoise clan. Xiang Jingyu's loud voice suddenly sounded. Everyone looked at the strange and dazzling world in front of them and felt the quintessential qi in their bodies accelerate and condense in this environment. Their faces were filled with excitement. Everyone continued to move forward. At this time, Lu Ping's divine sense seemed to have found something, and he warned, "Be careful. There seems to be someone over there." Everyone was shocked. Lu Ping and Su Jin both used their divine sense, and Lone Eagle Ying Li's eyes also turned red at this time. 2 blood-red lights flickered in his eyes. It was actually a kind of divine sense. However, after the 3 of them used their divine sense, they found nothing, and Lu Ping's divine sense clearly found that the person was not far from them. Ying Li chuckled strangely and said, "Where is there anyone? There's not even a ghost." The crowd ignored Ying Li and looked at Lu Ping, who had a look of surprise on his face. Hee hee. At this moment, he heard 3 deep laughs. Lu Ping slapped his forehead and said to the 3-headed tyrant tortoise, "Brother Xiang, I'm sure you know the reason. Please enlighten us." The tyrant tortoise that carried Mr. One here was called Xiang Dun, and he said, "Because of the density of the 5 elements world's origin qi, the 5 elements world's origin qi circulates endlessly. The colorful lights formed can distort a cultivator's divine sense." Lu Ping was enlightened, but Xiang Jingyu continued to explain, "Brother Lu, in fact, your divine sense did find someone, but that person isn't at the place where your divine sense found him. As for where he is, I don't know. Maybe he's very far away, or maybe he's very close. In short, apart from the places where my eyes can see, most of the things my divine sense found are wrong." Finally, Xiang Shiping said, "There's no need for us to be discovered by others, because even if that person was right in front of us, his divine sense wouldn't be able to pinpoint our location. Unless he has a divine ability similar to Brother Lu, Brother Su, and Brother Ing, and is even more powerful than the 3 of you, then he might be able to discover us in advance." Lu Ping nodded and said, "In other words, the divine sense has lost its effect in this place, and we can only rely on our divine sense?" Xiang Shiping nodded and said, "The divine sense is the most important. Of course, hearing and smell can also be used." Everyone nodded, and the 3 tyrant tortoises continued to advance on the sea's surface. Lu Ping wanted to release Dabeo, but he was afraid that the 5 elements world's origin qi would explode if he took Dabeo out. The 3 tyrant tortoises were getting bigger and bigger after a while. It wasn't because they were stretching their bodies, but because the sea was getting shallower and shallower. By now, although Lu Ping had finished refining the Jade Sobering Eye Serum, he hadn't completely combined the 9 types of water into one to elevate the true eyes of 3 pure ones to the level of a great divine sense. Even so, Lu Ping could faintly see through the colorful mist that there seemed to be an island that looked like a huge platform in the distance. It was said that in the past, Taoist Gue often preached in his true form, lying on this huge stone platform. Cultivators of both the human race and the demon race who came to listen to his preaching would cover the surrounding sea area. Even so, Taoist Gue would often feel drowsy during his preaching. However, at this time, the people listening to his preaching would not be disappointed. On the contrary, they would be very excited. Because of his drowsiness, Taoist Gue's consciousness seemed to have become hazy, and he could often talk about many other precious secret arts at will, or reveal some secrets about the 7th patriarch in this world, and so on. For example, the Samling 5 Elements leaf, which could heal origin injuries, was asked by a cultivator under Jiao Dorn's tutelage while Taoist Gue was asleep. He also mentioned that the 7 heaven-splitting ancestors weren't originally from this world, and that cultivators would be rejected by this world after becoming true spirits. In the end, they had no choice but to leave this world in search of a more suitable path of cultivation, and so on and so forth. These were all things that Taoist Gue had unintentionally learned from listening cultivators while he was half asleep. The 3 giant tortoises returned to their human forms as soon as they reached the shore. Xiang Shiping said, "Everyone, let's part ways here. We'll meet again here before the dojo disappears into the void." After saying that, the 3 cultivators of the tyrant tortoise tribe left. Among the remaining people, Su Jin was the first to smile and said, "Take care, everyone. I will also leave first. I wish you all a fruitful trip to the 5 Elements Tortoise Treasury." After Su Jin's figure disappeared into the colorful light, Lu Ping also smiled and nodded slightly at Mr. Wan and Peacock Wu Fa. Then, he also retreated into the depths of the light until his figure disappeared. After Lu Ping left the crowd, the green light in his eyes brightened. The 3 pure true pupils was used to the limit by Lu Ping. From time to time, he would look around, and sometimes he would walk a few steps slowly or quickly, as if he was trying to avoid something. At this time, Lu Ping seemed to have thought of something. He looked around and did not find anything. With a thought, Linglong's wine cauldron appeared in front of his chest. Linglong was about to speak by the side of the wine cauldron when she suddenly noticed something. She screamed, "Quick, put me away. I am going to be disintegrated by the light." The panic in Linglong's voice really scared Lu Ping. A light flashed in his chest, and the wine cauldron disappeared into his heart space again. Lu Ping's divine sense descended and saw that Linglong was still hiding in the wine cauldron. He asked, "How can this be? Isn't your talent to adjust the yuan qi of heaven and earth? How can you say that your body is going to be disintegrated by the light?" Linglong was annoyed. Linglong is not the cauldron of heaven and earth. It is just a spirit artifact that has gone through its first lightning trial. How can it withstand such dense yuan qi of heaven and earth? If it is just the yuan qi of heaven and earth, then it is fine. But outside the cauldron is the yuan qi of 5 elements. The yuan qi of 5 elements are mutually reinforcing and restraining each other. If my quality is high enough, then of course I can adjust it. If the quality is not high enough, then I will be devoured by it. Lu Ping had originally wanted to rely on Linglong's wine cauldron to adjust the yuan qi of heaven and earth to speed up the process of absorbing and refining the yuan qi of 5 elements. He did not expect that Linglong would hide in the heart space and not come out, so Lu Ping had to experiment first. It must be known that this platform had appeared out of thin air above the sea. There was not only one path to this place, but there were also many paths in all directions. Just the path that Lu Ping and the others had taken had already gathered dozens of Dharma adepts. Including the adepts from other directions, there were probably more than 100 Dharma adepts here. Even if Taoist Gui's body was large enough and the platform was wide enough, it did not seem sparse with so many Dharma adepts gathered on the platform. Moreover, there were also adepts from the Ba Gui clan among them. Lu Ping first took out an array board from his storage device, then set up a few of the array equipment that he had prepared in advance according to the position. After activating the array board, it formed an early warning and defense array. Unexpectedly, in just a short while, under the erosion of the surrounding 5-colored light, the yuan qi that the array had gathered was quickly lost, and the light of the spirit stones embedded in the array board also began to dim. Lu Ping simply sat down cross-legged and separated a part of his divine will to control Lu Xiaoping to stand guard by his side, while he himself began to slowly circulate the inner yuan in his body, to see if this place of the 5 elements also had the effect of purifying and condensing his inner yuan. Slowly, the inner yuan flowed along his blood vessels, and the 5-colored light wrapped around Lu Ping, then separated into wisps of water blue yuan qi that entered the surface of Lu Ping's body. Lu Ping's quintessential qi devoured and refined them one by one. He could clearly feel that his quintessential qi seemed to have increased a little. Although the increase was minuscule, it was only the effect of circulating his quintessential qi for a single cycle. But this speed of increase was already far beyond Lu Ping's usual cultivation speed. This place of the 5 elements was a holy place for training to strengthen the foundation of a practitioner, and, at the same time, it was also an excellent place for training. Lu Ping circulated this inner yuan through his blood vessels several times. After an unknown amount of time, a faint layer of blue material began to gradually appear in the inner yuan, then began to flow along his blood vessels out of his body, causing the surface of Lu Ping's body to gradually be covered with a layer of light blue powder-like material. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that these things were the impurities in his inner yuan? Although Lu Ping didn't know whether it was because he cultivated the North Sea wave listening technique, or because of his own bloodline, he needed to smelt his bloodline once every time he advanced. Ordinary people in the blood condensation realm would smelt their bloodline 3 times, but Lu Ping had smelted his bloodline 6 times, and it seemed that he would continue to smelt his bloodline. Moreover, when Lu Ping was in the core forging realm, the first thing he smelted was the dark essence heavy water, which was mainly used to purify and condense inner yuan. Lu Ping had always thought that his foundation was strong enough, and that his inner yuan was pure and thick enough. However, he didn't expect that there were still impurities in his inner yuan, even though these impurities didn't seem obvious. When Lu Ping woke up from his cultivation, he faintly sensed that something was about to be summoned by him. He felt as if he couldn't help but summon the water elemental yuan qi from the land of 5 elemental elements. Lightning tribulation. It seemed that crossing the first lightning tribulation was imminent. However, this was not the place to cross the tribulation. Lu Ping pinched his fingers and calculated. Half a year had passed since he started cultivating. Chapter 11:10. Naturally, this was not the place to cross the thunder calamity. Lu Ping had forcibly sealed his own cultivation, so that his cultivation would not increase even the slightest bit due to the circulation of his zhenqi. However, it seemed that this was not a long-term plan. As time passed, Lu Ping's cultivation would eventually break through the seal and summon the thunder calamity on its own. When that time came, no matter where Lu Ping was, he would have to fight the thunder calamity. Lu Ping manipulated Lu Xiaoping to look everywhere he could see. When he found that there was no one else within a radius of tens of feet, a spatial portal opened beside him, revealing a corner of the small mountain where the Samling 5 Elements leaf was planted. The moment the Samling 5 Elements leaf appeared, the 5 Elements qi around Lu Ping suddenly began to fluctuate. Lu Ping was shocked and hurriedly shrunk the spatial portal. However, the turbulence of the 5 Elements qi did not subside. Instead, it became more and more serious, and it began to spread far away. At the same time, the 5 Elements qi rushed into the spatial portal, even forming a 5-colored vortex in front of it. Seeing this, Lu Ping hurriedly closed the spatial portal of the Golden House, cutting off the connection between the Samling 5 Elements leaf and the 5 Elements qi. However, the turbulence of the 5 Elements qi still spread far away. Lu Ping made a prompt decision. After recalling Lu Xiaoping, he moved in another direction. Not long after Lu Ping left, several figures came from different directions to surround the place where Lu Ping had been. When they found that there was nothing there, they looked at each other. These people had used different methods to conceal their true faces, and their cultivation was also uneven. At this moment, one of them said, "Did someone find us?" The others were silent. At this moment, another wave of turbulence came from afar. This time, the turbulence of the 5 Elements qi was even more violent than before, and it lasted for a longer time. The first person said again, "Not good. We have fallen into someone else's trap." Without waiting for him to say anything, the others had already retreated into the colorful light and disappeared. Seeing this, the man also hid in the light and headed in the direction of the yuan qi fluctuation. On the other side of the land of 5 Elements, the 5 peacock women were besieged once again. The lone eagle Ingli was also lured away. However, the 5 peacock women seemed to be prepared this time. The land of 5 Elements seemed to have greatly increased the strength of the 5 peacock women when they joined forces. Although the besiegers were extremely familiar with the methods of the 5 peacock women, they were unable to restrain the 5 Elements formation this time. Instead, they were being suppressed by the 5 peacock women. The masked cyan-robed cultivator from earlier was still among them. However, his eyes were as gloomy as water. In an instant, he suddenly joined the siege against the 5 women, causing the situation to improve considerably. However, at this moment, the leader of the 5 women, Yang Huajun, suddenly said, "Peacock Plume, go." As soon as he said that, a golden plume feather appeared on the top of Yang Huajun's head. Immediately after, feathers of different colors appeared in the hands of the other 4 women. These feathers were 3 feet long, and were colorful. The moment the 5 feathers appeared in the hands of the 5 women, the 5 elements spiritual essence that had originally connected the 5 women's auras into one immediately merged with the surrounding 5 elements spiritual chi. With the 5 women as the center, it was as if the surrounding spiritual chi of heaven and earth was for the 5 women to use. The surging 5 elements spiritual chi rushed toward the 5 women and the 5 different colored feathers in their hands like a tide. The aura of the 5 women suddenly skyrocketed. The masked, cyan-robed cultivator looked at the rootless plume with a look of surprise and greed, but he did not hesitate at all. He shouted, "Retreat!" Everyone there grew puzzled. However, seeing the masked cultivator retreat into the 5-colored light, the others had no choice but to follow suit. 2 of them were slightly slower, and the 5 female generals swung the plume feathers in their hands forward. Next, a 5-colored light swept forward, and the 2 cultivators were instantly engulfed by the light. By the time the light dissipated, the 2 cultivators had disappeared. So, seeing these people retreat, Yang Huajun breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Let's go." Yang Rujuan wanted to say something, but Yang Lijun, who was beside her, tugged at her sleeve. In the end, she did not say anything and followed behind Yang Huajun and Yang Wanjun. Not long after the 5 women left, the few cultivators who had almost surrounded Lu Ping broke through the 5-colored light and appeared at the place where the 5 women had left. In the end, they missed again. "Damn it!" The cultivator from before scolded. "Brother Jinglei, you're too late." A voice came. Brother Tsing Yi, who had left earlier, turned back again and said in a low voice when he saw this group of cultivators. The friar replied with an "oh" and said, "So the 5 peacocks are really here?" Brother Tsing Yi snorted coldly and said, "If it wasn't for Brother Jinglei's late arrival, we might have already taken down the 5 peacocks with our combined strength." The friar's face also darkened and said, "Is Mugu questioning me?" Brother Tsing Yi snorted coldly and did not speak again, but the meaning was clear. Both of them didn't speak, and the other cultivators in the surroundings didn't speak as well. Right at this moment, the cultivator explained, "We also noticed the violent fluctuations of the 5 elements origin chi earlier, but when we rushed over, there was no one there." Brother Tsing Yi came to a realization and said, "Luring the tiger away from the mountain?" The cultivator hesitated for a moment and shook his head. "It's hard to say. Other than that lone eagle, we did not discover any other reinforcements from the 5 peacocks." Brother Tsing Yi said, "That day, the 5 peacocks seemed to have arrived at the 5 elements realm with Lu Tianping of the North Sea, Su Jin of the Ziyang Palace, and, a few others. Were they the ones behind this?" The cultivator shook his head and said, "They must have met by chance. This time, the 5 peacocks went out on their own, and no one else knew about it. After the peacock royalty was discovered, although they sent experts into the South Sea to look for them, they were all led astray by our people." Brother Tsing Yi nodded as if he agreed with the cultivator's words, but then he seemed to have thought of something and said, "I saw Grandmaster Wen Yuan just now. Could it be?" Brother Tsing Yi did not finish his sentence, as if he was sure that the person in front of him could understand him. Sure enough, the friar shook his head and said, "That's impossible. When my cousin returned from the East Sea, he was alone. Mr. Wen did not follow him. I heard from my cousin that Mr. Wen had already arrived at the South Sea at that time, and it seemed like he was going to the Nether Space Sea. This time, he must have come to the 5 elements realm by coincidence, so it can't be my cousin's intention." Brother Tsing Yi smiled faintly and said, "I heard that your cousin is now in the cultivation world of the plains, together with the cultivators of the Tianxian sect, resisting the attack of Mara on the sea. He has made a great name for himself and made a great contribution. Nowadays, everyone in the cultivation world speaks highly of him. In comparison, Brother Jinglei, you are a notch below him." The friar sneered and said, "Mu Gu, you don't have to provoke me. My cousin is the #1 expert in the 3rd generation of the family, and he is someone who can stand shoulder to shoulder with you. However, Mu Gu, you are now just like me, doing some shady things." A hint of anger appeared in Brother Tsing Yi's eyes, but the friar stared back at him with equal harshness. Neither of them was willing to give in. Right at this moment, a person emerged from within the multicolored light and said, "All right, if both of you continue like this, then you won't be able to find the 5-colored peacock plume, and the 5-element fan of light will be even further away in the indefinite future. The two of them suddenly turned around, and Brother Tsingy asked, "Brother Yi, did you find any clues?" The person who appeared in front of Friar Yi said, "It's the same kind of fluctuation that Brother Jinglei mentioned before. However, compared to before, the movement is much smaller. It doesn't seem like a diversion, but more like an experiment. However, this person is very cautious, and by the time we arrived, he had already left." Brother Tsingy pondered for a moment and said, "It should be that someone is also experimenting with some kind of treasure, and it's not that he is deliberately helping the 5 peacocks." "Treasure?" The cultivator surnamed Yi said. "Could it be a treasure similar to the invisible fan of light?" Friar Yi shook his head and said with a smile, "How is that possible? The 5 elements feather of the peacock race is not that easy to obtain. Moreover, the range of this fluctuation is far less than the 5 elements feather." Friar Yi said, "Then what should we do? Stop paying attention to this person?" Brother Tsingy thought for a moment and finally nodded. "There is no need to look for this person, but send 1 or 2 brothers to keep an eye on him. If we have the 5 elements feather, we will go and meet this person if we have time. Also, don't kill the lone eagle for now. No matter what, the peacock royalty and the lone eagle are actually together. This is a new thing in the world of cultivation, and we should take this opportunity to find out everything." After Lu Ping changed his location, he once again opened the space portal that connected to the Samling 5 elements leaf. However, due to the previous lesson, he only slowly opened a fist-sized hole. Even so, the moment the Samling 5 elements leaf's light came into contact with the 5 elements tortoise's light, the surrounding 5 elements primordial energy became turbulent. Left with no other choice, Lu Ping had to leave and look for another location. After the Samling 5 elements leaf absorbed 5 types of heaven low-grade 5 element spirit, Lu Ping had not been able to gather enough heaven mid-grade 5 element spirit. As a result, although the Samling 5 elements leaf had its 7th leaf, it looked dispirited and listless. However, Lu Ping had opened the golden house twice, causing the surrounding 5 elements spirit to surge in. Although it was only for a short period of time, Lu Ping could sense that the Samling 5 elements leaf's vitality had increased significantly. The originally dispirited 5 elements Samling leaf seemed to have become much more spirited. After much difficulty, he finally found a place with a radius of several dozen feet where there was no one else's aura. Then, Lu Ping opened the space portal of the golden house again. However, this time, Lu Ping had shrunk the size of the portal. Even so, the moment the 3 spirits 5 elements leaf came into contact with the 5 elements Yuan Qi, it still caused the Yuan Qi within a radius of over 100 feet to shake violently. Like a tide of Yuan Qi, the Yuan Qi of the 5 elements quickly gathered at the entrance of the cave. Chapter 11:11. Lu Ping tried his best to control the space portal, trying to weaken the influx of 5 elements Yuan Qi in order to slow down this chain reaction. However, the effect was not very good. The 5 elements Yuan Qi was still spreading around, but it was a lot weaker. Lu Xiaoping wandered around the periphery of Lu Ping's vision range after he cast the 3 pure true pupils. This way, Lu Ping could monitor a radius of almost 1,000 feet around him. Fortunately, he hadn't found any traces of other people that were attracted by the turbulence of his Yuan Qi. Lu Ping's divine sense was constantly paying attention to the Samling 5 elements Yuan Qi in the Golden House. Although he could only condense a small amount of 5 elements Yuan Qi into the top of the Golden House, this 5 elements Yuan Qi was very condensed. Even so, the moment this 5 elements Yuan Qi descended, it was absorbed by the 7 leaves. The leaves that were originally drooping down started to stand up, but the speed was very slow. At this time, the stalk of the grass also emitted a 5-colored light. Then it melted, floated up, and melted again. Lu Ping stayed here for about half an hour. The 5 elements Yuan Qi caused by the Samling 5 elements Yuan Qi finally spread out of Lu Ping's vision range. Lu Ping immediately closed the space portal, stood up, and left. Not long after Lu Ping left, a colorless light rolled out, and 2 figures walked out of the light. They looked at the place where Lu Ping was before, and one of them said, "Damn, he ran away again." The other person said, "If he really ran away, then he ran away. If this person is really covering for the 5 peacocks, then we don't need to pay attention to him. That's why Senior Brother Mu and Senior Brother Yi only sent the 2 of us to investigate. Otherwise, we would be surrounded by a group of people." The first person said, "Do you think it's possible that this person originally had a treasure in his hand, and he wasn't covering for the 5 peacocks?" The second person hesitated for a moment, and then said, "That's impossible. Besides the 5 peacocks that can stir up the 5 elements Yuan Qi, what other treasure can cause such a strange 5 elements Yuan Qi?" That's not necessarily the case. At least the imitation spirit treasure of the Qinkuan wine cauldron might be able to do it. You also said that it would require a spirit treasure. There are several such treasures in the cultivation world, but who would be willing to bring them here? The light of the 5 elements here is the nemesis of any treasure of the 5 elements. Even if the treasure is placed here, it will be corroded by the light after a long time, not to mention using Zhen Yuan to activate it. With great difficulty, he once again found a secluded place. Lu Ping repeated the same method. About an hour later, the Yuan Qi turbulence once again spread more than 1,000 feet away. Lu Ping had no choice but to change his location again. Despite Lu Ping's cautiousness, after doing this a few times, Lu Ping still realized that he had attracted the attention of some people. There were people constantly tracking him, and the number of people had increased from 2 to 6. Lu Ping could even sense the presence of a mid-stage Dharma adept among them. Lu Ping was a little surprised that he was not alone. This was not the way to go. Lu Ping opened the golden house several times to help the Samling 5 elements leaf absorb the 5 elements Yuan Qi. Each time, it would take about an hour, and after several attempts, it had accumulated for about 10 to 10 hours. However, the 5 elements Yuan Qi that the Samling 5 elements leaf had absorbed so far was only enough to support the 7 previously drooping leaves. The stalk of the grass also seemed to have a faint 5-colored hue. How long would it take for the 8th leaf to grow? One had to know that the 5 elements turtle depository was probably the only place in the entire world of practitioners where the 5 elements Yuan Qi could be found. Even if there were other places, at least for now, Lu Ping did not know. If he missed this opportunity, he did not know when he would be able to grow the Samling 5 elements leaf again. Did he really have to find 5 mid-grade heaven-level 5 elements spiritual items? Even if he found them, what about the 5 high-grade heaven-level 5 elements spiritual items? Even if he found them, what about the 5 high-grade heaven-level 5 elements spiritual items? Just as Lu Ping was at a loss, Lu Xiaoping suddenly warned Lu Ping from afar. Lu Ping was shocked and immediately sealed the door of the golden house. The 5 elements Yuan Qi and the surroundings immediately calmed down. It was only then that Lu Ping noticed that Lu Xiaoping's signal was not that someone was approaching, but that something else had happened. Lu Ping stealthily moved in the direction Lu Xiaoping had indicated. A series of sounds of magic weapons colliding with each other and the rumbling of spells could be heard. Strangely, even at such a close distance, there was not the slightest fluctuation of Yuan Qi. This place of the 5 elements was truly miraculous. It was extremely difficult to generate any fluctuation of Yuan Qi. Even if 2 parties were to fight, the fluctuation of Yuan Qi in the surroundings would immediately be neutralized by the light of the 5 elements. It was precisely because of this that the enormous fluctuation of Yuan Qi in this place attracted so much attention. Whether it was the 5 peacock women or Lu Ping guiding the 5 elements Yuan Qi to Samling the 5 elements leaf, they would immediately be tracked down. Because only an extremely powerful treasure could cause a fluctuation of Yuan Qi in Taoist Gui's dojo, which was filled with the light of the 5 elements. Relying on his newly formed 3 pure true pupils, Lu Ping was able to see through the light of the 5 elements and see his opponents, just like now. Watching the battle in front of him, Lu Ping could not help but raise his eyebrows. Ingli did not expect that ever since he entered the place of the 5 elements, everything would go wrong. First, he was humiliated by Lu Tianping. Then he was deliberately ignored by a strange, masked cultivator in Cyan, and then he was easily injured. With great difficulty, he followed the 5 peacock women into the place of the 5 elements and got rid of Lu Tianping and the others, but immediately after, he fell into a new crisis with the 5 women. There was a mysterious force plotting against the 5 women. Who were these people? How dare they plot against the direct bloodline of the Peacock royalty? Didn't they know that the Peacock royalty was the direct bloodline of Peng Daoren, the first ancestor of the world? Did they not know that the Peacock royalty was the direct bloodline of the first ancestor of the world, Peng Daoren, known as the #1 race of the demon race? Even if the lone eagle took revenge on the demon race with the blood of the rock, it would not dare to attack the Peacock race. Once it succeeded, it would inevitably cause a sensation in the whole lone eagle. Even if it failed, it would be regarded as a hero among the lone eagle. Even now, Ingli had realized that he might have fallen into the enemy's trap again. Just when he was lured away from the 5 peacock women, he realized that something was wrong. But when Ingli tried to get rid of the person in front of him, his opponent suddenly burst out with strength far beyond his own. At the same time, 2 more people suddenly flashed out of the 5-colored light. The 3 of them joined forces and almost forced Ingli to stay away from the 5 peacock women. They want to capture me alive. Ingli was also one of the best among the 3 generations of lone eagle cultivators. Soon, he knew the other party's plot. His contact with the peacock race was really a pleasure that everyone in the cultivation world wanted to explore. What's more, the peacock royalty behind them and the background of the lone eagle were enough for all the cultivators to speculate the worst result with the worst malice. So, they must figure it out from me. Ingli, who had thought this through, revealed a wry smile of mockery. He was asking for trouble. If he said that he and Yang Rujuan were in love with each other, would anyone believe that their love was pure? Ingli and Rujun are really in love with each other. His body suddenly shook. At the moment when Ingli's imagination was running wild, the 3 cultivators who were fighting with him finally lost their patience to tangle with him. The first cultivator's magic weapon broke through the cover of the treasure in Ingli's hand. Although it was blocked by the feather shield, the second cultivator's attack immediately followed, and the feather shield was once again broken into feathers flying all over the sky. The third cultivator took advantage of the situation and approached Ingli. A ray of light from his hand went straight into Ingli's body, blocking the circulation of true essence. Ingli was suddenly imprisoned in place. Who the hell are you people? You even dare to provoke the princess of the peacock race. Even the people from the 5 holy lands wouldn't dare to be so presumptuous. Although Ingli's cultivation was imprisoned, his words were not. The moment he was captured, he still had to maintain an imposing manner. It was just that he sounded a little fierce in appearance, but weak in heart. Aha, you can't provoke the princess of the peacock race. Are you trying to say that the emperor's son-in-law of the peacock race can't be provoked as well? A cultivator saw Ingli lying on the ground and suddenly felt it was funny. As he prepared to deal with him, he couldn't help but tease him. What the hell do you people want? I, Ingli, am the direct descendant of the lone eagle, and I have an appointment with the 3rd princess of the peacock royalty. Aren't you afraid of the joint revenge of the peacock royalty and the lone eagle? The other 2 cultivators stood with their hands behind their back, completely ignoring Ingli's shouts. Only the cultivator who spoke first smiled and said, "This is the problem. If the 2 clans join forces, it really makes me a little afraid. But first, why would the peacock royalty and the lone eagle join forces to retaliate against me?" Ingli was stunned for a moment, then suddenly sneered and said, "The few of you led me here and suddenly captured me. I'm afraid it's because of this, right?" The friar smiled and said, "Oh, it's not easy. Now I understand. I've heard of your reputation in the cultivation world. I originally thought it was exaggerated, but now it seems that you have some merits. How about it? Are you going to tell me? My blood-scraping technique hasn't fallen into anyone's hands for a long time. Do you want to wait for a while?" Blood-scraping technique? Ingli cried out involuntarily. "You're from the Lingyun Valley." "Oh, I've been recognized. Since you know, then there's no need for me to say more. I don't want to waste my saliva." The friar pretended to be surprised, but in fact, he didn't care that his identity was exposed at this time. He looked at Ingli and said with a smile. Ingli's face had already turned snow-white, as if he was extremely afraid of the blood-scraping technique. After a moment, the friar's expression suddenly changed, and he said, "Good boy. You actually want to commit suicide in front of me. Can you do it?" As soon as his voice fell, Ingli, whose eyes suddenly bulged out, laughed fiercely and said, "If I, the lone eagle, want to commit suicide, which of you can stop me? Even the blood-scraping technique won't work. Not good. He's going to self-destruct, dodge." Boom. The 5 elements Yuan Qi within a radius of dozens of feet was suddenly shaken, and then as the vibration spread, it was continuously reduced and dissolved by the 5-colored light. Finally, it completely calmed down in front of Lu Ping. Chapter 11-12. Hundreds of feet away, Lu Ping, who was covered by the 5-colored light, smiled. Ing Li's trick was quite good. But what kind of magical power was the blood-scraping technique that made Ing Li so afraid that he made up his mind to blow up his own body the moment he heard it? Although Ing Li's Zhen Yuan was imprisoned, the Lone Eagle was known as the Lone Wanderer in the world of cultivation. He always had many desperate means to survive in the face of death. Otherwise, how could he have made such a name for himself in the world of cultivation? Even the descendants of the various demon clans with the Peng bloodline would turn pale at the mention of his name. Just as Ing Li was about to blow himself up, a cyan-red light quickly escaped under the cover of the explosion. At this time, the cultivators of the Lingyun Valley also realized that Ing Li was trying to sneak up on him. What he blew up was only his body, but the Dharma form had left his body and was trying to escape. Fool! The Dharma form is the condensation of the Zhen Yuan and the essence of the bloodline. How can you survive under the 5-colored light? The monks of Lingyun Valley spoke very quickly, but before he could finish, a scream came from afar. It was Ing Li's voice. Ing Li obviously did not know that the 5-colored light could cause such serious damage to the Dharma form. The monks of Lingyun Valley hurriedly called for the 2 cultivators behind him to catch up. They had to snatch Ing Li's Dharma form before the 5-colored light obliterated the Dharma form's consciousness and original essence. Otherwise, they would be left with nothing. Unexpectedly, as soon as the 3 of them moved, a vague figure had already flown to the place where Ing Li's Dharma form was 1 step ahead of the 3 of them under the cover of the 5-colored light. "Who are you? How dare you?" The Lingyun Valley cultivator roared angrily, but the person who came did not seem to feel anything. He stretched out his hand and grabbed forward, and Ing Li's miserable cries came to an abrupt end. Then, before the 3 of them arrived, the blurry figure plunged into the multicolored light, making it difficult for them to find any traces of it. Damn it. We worked so hard for so long, but it was all taken away by someone else. One of the cultivators cursed fiercely. The cultivator of the Lingyun Valley looked in the direction where Ing Li's Dharma form had been taken, wondering what he was thinking. Another cultivator saw the expression of the monks of Lingyun Valley and thought that he had discovered something. So he asked, "Senior Brother Yi, did you discover that person's identity?" The person whom the monks of Lingyun Valley called Senior Brother Yi was actually the person who had spoken to Friar Mu in green and the suspected direct descendant of the Yuan clan, Yuan Jinglei, Friar Yi. Friar Yi came back to his senses and said, "That's not it. I'm just a little worried. This time, what we're planning may very well expose our identities." The 2 cultivators were shocked when they heard this. They naturally knew the consequences of plotting against the direct descendant of the Peacock royalty. The Peacock royalty was known as the #1 force of the Demon Clan, even more famous than the overseas green sea snakes. The Lingyun Valley and the Demon Clan of the Endless Mountains had been fighting openly and secretly for many years, but they had never gained much from the Peacock royalty. There were often rumors in the cultivation world that they had accidentally suffered some losses. Although the cultivators who intercepted the Peacock royalty this time were a private operation by a few direct descendant cultivators who had a good relationship with a few of the major forces, once their identities were exposed, the Peacock royalty would be enraged, and it would be a disaster for the cultivation world. They might also face the possibility of being abandoned by their sections. Although there were hundreds and thousands of demon clans living in the Endless Mountains, the Peacock royalty alone had the right to speak in the Endless Mountains. In the face of such power, even the Lingyun Valley, as one of the 5 holy lands, would often have to retreat, let alone take the initiative to provoke them. The first cultivator continued, "Senior brother Yi, it can't be. In this land of 5 elements, a cultivator's divine sense, vision, and hearing are all greatly reduced." Friar Yi said, "You saw it too. Ing Li's Dharma form appeared in front of us, and the hidden person took it away from us. Obviously, everything we did before was under that person's eyes. I'm afraid the identity of the monks of Lingyun Valley will be difficult to protect." Another cultivator said, "How is that possible? I've been paying attention to our surroundings and didn't notice anyone spying on us. Besides, even if he heard us, so what? We've all used our powers to conceal our faces. Even if he spread the news, we can just deny it to the peacock royalty in the future. Our sects will protect us." Friar Yi shook his head and said, "Junior brother, although your powers are not weak, from what I can see, that person's power is definitely not weaker than mine, and his powers are even stronger than yours." The other cultivator seemed a little unconvinced, but he remembered that the person in front of him was one of the 7 streaks of rainbow light of the Lingyun Valley. He was at the mid-Dharma stage, and his knowledge and vision were far above his own. He had always admired him. If he said that the person's eye sorcery powers were above his own, then it must be true. Friar Yi seemed to have thought of something and suddenly smiled. He said, "I hope that person knows what's good for him and doesn't want to get involved in our fight. Otherwise, if I find out who he is, it will be a fight to the death." Lu Ping walked through the colorful light in a few different directions. He was confident that he would be able to remove all traces of himself, and then he stopped at a place where there was no one around. Lu Ping casually set up a restriction around him. However, under the erosion of the colorful light, the effect of the restriction was constantly weakening, but it could still hold on for a while. Lu Ping opened a spirit sealing box, and a blood-red 3-inch eagle Dharma power with a snake's tail flapped its wings and was about to fly out of the box. Unexpectedly, thin lines of spiritual light appeared around the spirit sealing box, and the little eagle was firmly trapped in the box. "Lu Tianping, it's you." After failing to escape, the blood eagle Dharma power had to return to the spirit sealing box. At this time, the blood eagle Dharma power saw that the person outside the spirit sealing box was actually Lu Ping. This blood eagle Dharma power was naturally Ing Li, who had escaped from the self-destruction of his body. "What will it take for you to let me out?" After seeing Lu Ping, Ing Li unexpectedly calmed down and asked Lu Ping coldly, "What do you think?" Lu Ping smiled and asked Ing Li, who was trapped in the spirit sealing box. Ing Li looked up at Lu Ping and asked, "You want to kill me?" Lu Ping smiled. "Actually, I also want to know how you became Dao companions with fellow Yang Rujuan. If you want to tell me, then tell me. If you don't want to tell me, I can only use a mystic technique to see if I can get anything useful." Ing Li sneered. "Mystic technique? Do you think you're a great cultivator? Even a great cultivator might not be able to use a mystic technique on me. Not to mention that we're just cultivators of the same level. However, I do want to be soul-searched now. At least I'll try my best to counterattack, and you won't have it easy either." Under the threat of the blood-shaving technique of the monks of Lingyun Valley, Ing Li would rather sacrifice his body than reveal anything. Naturally, Lu Ping did not think that he could pry open his mouth, so he said directly, "In that case, let's just wait and see." With that, a majestic divine thought immediately entered the imprisoned Dharma power. Ing Li screamed and said, "How can your divine thought? How can it? Ah, spare me. Give me a quick death. Don't even think about it. I won't let you have it easy even if I die." The mystic technique of soul-searching was extremely difficult to perform. It often required the cultivator's divine thought to be far stronger than that of the target, and a lot of preparation, so that the mystic technique of soul-searching could be used to its fullest extent. However, Lu Ping did not have the time to prepare these things now. Ignoring Ing Li's ghostly cries and howls, Lu Ping only focused on invading Ing Li's consciousness with his divine thought, tracing the fragments of memories all the way up. After a while, Ing Li's roars became weaker and weaker. Due to the confusion of his consciousness, he even began to babble nonsense. Lu Ping's brows furrowed tighter and tighter. Obviously, The effect of the soul search was not ideal. In the end, he had no choice but to divert part of his attention to listen to Ying Li's nonsense, hoping to get some supplement from these words. The enchantment laid by Lu Ping became weaker and weaker under the erosion of the colorful light. When the entire enchantment collapsed with a crisp sound, Lu Ping opened his eyes at the same time. A pale look flashed across his face. Obviously, the soul-searching mystic art had consumed a lot of energy for Lu Ping. Under the erosion of the soul-searching secret technique, Ying Li's consciousness had been completely obliterated, leaving only a Dharma form that was about to collapse. Lu Ping cast a few enchantments on the Blood Eagle Dharma form, completely stabilizing its body that was about to collapse. Then, he carefully closed the spirit sealing box and put it into the storage magic tool. Putting a soul-returning pill into his mouth, he began to refine the medicine and began to nourish and restore his divine thought. At the same time, Lu Ping also began to sort out the memories of Ying Li that he had obtained through the soul-searching mystic art. Unfortunately, because there was not enough preparation, the soul-searching mystic art was not successful this time. There were not many memory fragments obtained, and most of them were useless. Only a few seemed to be of some use, but there was no memory about the peacock royalty and whether the lone eagle had a plot because of his relationship with Yang Rujuan. This made Lu Ping slightly disappointed, but he was immediately attracted by another memory. 5 elements spiritual light fan. There is such a treasure? But the life plume feather of the peacock royalty is not so easy to get. Perhaps it was because Ying Li had just figured out that the 5 peacock girls had been robbed continuously, so the memory was particularly deep. Under the soul-searching mystic art of Lu Ping, it was completely preserved, so that Lu Ping also knew the crisis that the 5 peacock girls might be facing at this time. Lu Ping even suspected that the vitality turbulence caused by him absorbing the 5 elements Yuan Qi and paying attention to Samling's 5 elements leaf might have been mistaken for the peacock race. Otherwise, how could he be continuously followed and monitored? Chapter 11:13. Among the 7th patriarch, Peng Doran's cultivation base and strength were the highest. However, the reason why his strength was the highest was mostly due to Peng Doran's #1 artifact, the 7 Thunder Treasures Calabash. However, other than this #1 artifact, it was rumored that Peng Doran's strength might not be able to gain an advantage over Zhao Daoran. The most convincing piece of evidence was that Zhao Daoran had once used his own natal sword technique to break Peng Doran's natal sword technique, the Great 5 Elements Holy Light technique. Therefore, if one wanted to talk about which of the 7th patriarch's natal sword technique was the best apart from their respective Dharma treasures, then Zhao Doran's natal sword technique was the best, while Zhao Doran's Great 5 Elements Holy Light technique could only be ranked second. Unfortunately, both of their sword techniques could not appear in the world after the 7th patriarch. Although Zhao Daoran passed down the path of sword cultivation, his own sword technique was not passed down to the world. Peng Daoran did pass down the Great 5 Elements Holy Light technique to his descendants, but this sword technique could only be cultivated when one's cultivation base reached a certain level. As for what this level was, Peng Daoran did not say clearly. There were many different opinions in the cultivation world, and the peacock royalty who inherited this sword technique was a taboo. However, from the 7th patriarch until now, no one from the peacock royalty had truly cultivated the Great 5 Elements Holy Light technique. Even the brilliant true spirit Lao Tzu in the history of the peacock royalty had not performed this complete sword technique. Although the true Great 5 Elements Holy Light technique did not appear in the cultivation world after Peng Daoran, the peacock royalty had passed down a set of inherited secret techniques about refining the 5 Elements Holy Light fan, which could unleash a portion of the Great 5 Elements Holy Light technique's power. Although the 5 Elements Holy Light fan that was refined with this secret technique could not unleash the full power of Peng Doran's sword technique, it could be considered a top-notch secret technique in the cultivation world. In particular, when this 5 Elements Holy Light technique was used, it could dissolve the opponent's sword technique's power, lose the opponent's Dharma treasures, and destroy Dharma treasures and formations. This sword technique made this sword technique famous in the cultivation world and made the invisible spirit Holy Light fan a few rare treasures in the world. In order to refine the 5 Elements Holy Light fan, The most important thing was that it needed the life tail feathers of the 5 practitioners of the peacock royalty. The purer the bloodline, the higher the level of cultivation, the better the quality of the life tail feathers, and the greater the power of the invisible spirit holy light fan. The 5 women of the Yang clan were peacock royalty princesses. Not only did they have the direct bloodline of the peacock royalty, there was no doubt that their bloodline was pure. Furthermore, the 5 of them came from the same mother, and all of them had early dharma cultivation. This not only eliminated the possibility of the life tail feathers of the 5 women being uneven, but the quality of the life tail feathers was also extremely high. What was even rarer was that the 5 women were of the 5 elements. Their life tail feathers could be said to be the best spiritual material for making the invisible spirit holy light fan. That was why when the 5 women of the Yang clan escaped from the endless mountains, they attracted so many masters of the peacock royalty to appear in the South Sea. That was why, after their identities were discovered, they attracted so many people who coveted their life tail feathers to attack them. It would be a lie to say that Lu Ping was not tempted by the invisible spirit holy light fan. However, with just the power of Lu Ping alone, even if he participated in the fight for the life tail feathers, he might not be able to see any benefit. If he was not careful and exposed his identity, it would really be a disaster. Moreover, the 5 women of the peacock were not easy to deal with, especially the golden peacock Yang Huajun. His strength was not inferior to the direct descendants of the other holy lands. The wooden peacock Yang Huajun was also very powerful. Furthermore, if the 5 women joined forces, they had a formation that could use the 5 elements divine light technique, which was even more powerful than the invisible spirit holy light fan. This was also the reason why the 5 women dared to walk out of the endless mountains. Although Lu Ping was confident that his strength was not weaker than Yang Huajun's, if he were to face the combined forces of the 5 women, Lu Ping could only retreat. If he was unlucky, he might even die at the hands of the 5 women. Lu Ping shook his head and suppressed the greed in his heart. Another clear thought that he had just obtained from Ying Li's remnant thought floated to his mind. This guy and Yang Rujuan were really in love with each other. Even when his own consciousness was about to disappear, he still couldn't forget about her. He actually sent a pleading thought to Lu Ping, which was that he hoped Lu Ping could protect Yang Rujuan's life. This was also why at the last moment, Ying Li let go of his resistance against the erosion of Lu Ping's divine sense and told Lu Ping about the invisible spirit holy light fan. Lu Ping couldn't help but laugh. He didn't promise Ying Li to do this. Most likely, it was because Ying Li couldn't stop Ying Li at the last moment, so he used this as an excuse to self-destruct. However, this excuse was more or less his original intention. However, if he was not injured, it was not impossible to help the 5 women of the peacock. After all, Lu Ping had learned about the 5 elements hidden tortoiseshell from Yang Rujuan. He more or less owed her a favor. This time, when Lu Ping used the soul-searching technique on a cultivator of the same level, it caused great damage to his own divine sense. Even with the help of the soul-recovering pill, Lu Ping spent 3 days and 3 nights to recover his divine sense. Lu Ping controlled Lu Xiaoping to wander around. After confirming that no one was paying attention to this place, Lu Ping stretched out his hand to make a hand sign. The hand sign shook off the 5 elements light around him, and then he patted his chest, summoning Linglong again. Have you thought it through? Do you really want to do this? Linglong looked at the hand sign that was being rapidly eroded by the 5 elements light. She was afraid that if she spoke too slowly, the hand sign would collapse and the 5 elements light would shoot at her body. Lu Ping waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, this hand sign can still last for a while. Isn't it just consuming some inner yuan? Just do your best to defend yourself. I will use my inner yuan to protect your body from being eroded by the 5 elements light." Linglong said unwillingly, "If this is the case, it will really consume a lot of your inner yuan. You should know that this 5 elements light is formed by the influence of Taoist Gui's practice. You are only a Dharma adept. How can you compare to these heaven-splitting giants?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "If I'm not worried, then what are you worried about? Just don't let your body be contaminated by the 5 elemental light. Besides, you know how strong my true essence is. Don't forget, I don't lack top-grade spirit stones. Even if my true essence can't last for a long time, I can still set up the spirit incineration array with 12 top-grade spirit stones. I'm sure it will last for a while. A spirit burning array with 12 top-grade spirit stones. Not to mention how extravagant it was. Even if it was set up, how many early Dharma adepts would be able to withstand it? However, it was clear that Lu Ping was one of these few people. Ever since Lu Ping had obtained a large number of top-grade spirit stones, he had asked Silver Fox for a spirit-burning array plate specially made for him. He only needed to embed 12 top-grade spirit stones on it, and it would be extremely easy to set up the spirit-burning array. Lu Ping sat cross-legged on the array plate, his hands forming a complicated hand sign. Then, a blue shield of inner yuan appeared in front of his chest, and the space door opened. The moment the Linglong wine cauldron was summoned from the core space, it was wrapped in the shield of inner yuan. When the 5 elements light hit the wine cauldron, it was blocked by the shield of inner yuan. At the same time, while Lu Ping was supporting the shield of inner yuan to prevent it from being destroyed by the invisible light, he once again divided a vigorous inner yuan to activate the Linglong wine cauldron. Buzz, 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 buzz. The Linglong wine cauldron began to spin slowly, and the speed of its rotation was getting faster and faster. As the wine cauldron spun, the surrounding 5 elements light began to be affected and gradually gathered in the middle of the wine cauldron. Gradually, it began to distort, and the 5 elements light became more and more indistinguishable, as if they were about to merge. Now is the time, Lu Ping thought to himself. With a gentle stroke of his finger, the space door of the House of Gold was opened. The door opened right under the wine cauldron, and it was under the control of the wine cauldron. This wave of 5 elements light, which had swept a radius of 30 feet, was under the control of the Linglong wine cauldron and poured into the Samling 5 elements leaf behind the space door. With the disappearance of the 5 elements light in the surrounding 30 feet, the 5 elements light in the distance slowly flowed over to supplement it, but it did not cause the 5 elements light to shake like before. However, despite the protection of Lu Ping's inner yuan, the effect of the wine cauldron was only within this range of 30 feet. If the range expanded any further, either Lu Ping's inner yuan would not be able to protect it, and the wine cauldron would be hit by the 5 elements light, or the 5 elements light would go out of control and produce a huge wave of yuan qi, which would not attract the attention of others. Although he couldn't unleash his full strength, at least this time, he could infuse the 3 spirits' 5 elemental leaf with a steady stream of 5 elemental light. It was much better than when Lu Ping had to constantly change directions. This went on for nearly an entire day. Finally, Lu Ping's Jinyuan began to decline significantly. He cast a hand seal, and the spirit-burning array formation beneath him was activated. A thick stream of spiritual energy was released from the array formation and squeezed into his body. Lu Ping then circulated the North Sea Wave listening scripture to refine the spiritual energy into Jinyuan and replenish his bloodline. This was also Lu Ping. If it was another cultivator, even if they did not explode from the spiritual energy that was forced into their blood, they would use other means to waste more than half of the spiritual energy. This was also one of the drawbacks of the burning spirit array. Despite this, there was still a lot of spiritual energy being wasted by the 5 elements light. Therefore, the burning spirit array was only activated for 5 days and 5 nights before it had to be stopped because the spiritual energy in the 12 top-grade spirit stones was exhausted. Lu Ping's divine sense passed through the golden house, and he was surprised to see that at the top of the Samling 5 elements leaf, a sharp and tender leaf had just burst out. The 8th leaf finally appeared. Lu Ping did not care about these top-grade spirit stones. He took out another 12 and was about to activate the array again, but he heard Linglong said, "Big brother, are you sure you want to activate the array again and pour in the 5 elements qi?" Chapter 11:14. Lu Ping was startled by Linglong's words. When he looked in the direction of Linglong's gaze, he discovered that the 5 elemental light within 1,000 feet radius had dimmed a lot. Although the 5 elemental light in the surroundings was replenishing this area, the Samling 5 elemental leaf was still continuously absorbing the 5 elemental light. Even with the suppression of Linglong's wine cauldron, which prevented the 5 elemental light from fluctuating violently and producing a strong yuan-qi tide, after 6 days and 6 nights, the 5 elemental light in the surroundings had become much thinner. Not good, Lu Ping thought to himself. The 5 elemental light in 1,000 feet radius had become thinner, and it was like a large cover with a diameter of over 200 feet. With such a large anomaly, if someone discovered it, they would definitely come to check it out. Lu Ping hurriedly closed the spatial portal of the Golden House and took back the Linglong's wine cauldron. After calling back Lu Xiaoping, who was standing guard outside, he picked up the soul-burning array's disc and quickly left this place. Not long after Lu Ping left, the 5 elemental light that had lost the suppression of Linglong's wine cauldron quickly flowed back to replenish itself due to the appearance of such a large thinned area. Violent yuan-qi turbulence was quickly produced, which then caused a strong yuan-qi tide that spread out in all directions. Hearing the exclamations and footsteps coming from afar, Lu Ping was secretly glad that he had left quickly. If he had continued to pour the 5 elemental light there, it would have exceeded the limit that Linglong's wine cauldron could suppress, and the yuan-qi tide would have become even more tyrannical. At that time, even he would have been sucked into this tide, and it would not have been easy for him to escape. Lu Ping carefully looked for a suitable place in the Dao field to continue pouring the 5 elemental light into the Samling 5 elemental leaf. From then on, Lu Ping was much more cautious. Using the soul-burning array to support his own yuan, he began to gradually shrink the spatial portal on the 5th day, causing the 5 elemental light to slow down. The speed at which the 5 elemental light was replenishing was faster than the speed at which the 5 elemental light was pouring into the Samling 5 elemental leaf. In this way, after the effect of the soul-burning array disappeared, the 5 elemental light that had become thinner because of the 5 elemental Samling 5 elemental leaf's absorption was also replenished. At this time, when Lu Ping took back the Linglong's wine cauldron, it would not cause any yuan-qi turbulence or even a yuan-qi tide. Although this may cause a certain waste of the best quality spirit stones inlaid in the soul-burning array, compared with the possibility of attracting the peeping of unknown enemies, it was undoubtedly much safer. After more than a month, the top-quality spirit stones in Lu Ping's hands were consumed in one breath, and the 8th leaf of the Samling 5 elemental leaf finally grew to perfection. But after more than 10 days, no matter how Lu Ping poured more and more 5 elemental light into the Samling 5 elemental leaf, the 9th leaf still did not appear. Lu Ping was very depressed. He watched the color of the grass stem become more and more conspicuous, and the 5-colored light continued to condense on it, almost dripping water. The other 8 leaves also became more and more verdant. From time to time, 5-colored dewdrops condensed on it, and then fell to the ground, but the 9th leaf still did not appear. After more than 10 days, at this time, Lu Ping had been using the soul-burning array for 2 months. He had used more than 100 top-quality spirit stones. At this time, the grass stem had completely turned into a 5-colored color, and the 5-colored dewdrops on the 8 leaves were constantly condensing, but the 9th leaf was still far away. At this time, Lu Ping finally realized that the reason why the 9th leaf did not appear was not because the 5-colored light was not enough, but there was another opportunity that he did not know did not appear. Lu Ping immediately put away the soul-burning array, and at the same time, he also put away the Linglong wine cauldron, got up and went in another direction. Lu Ping wandered freely in the 5-colored light, and he always felt that something seemed to be wrong with this place of 5 elements at that time. After half a day, he suddenly realized that the 5-colored light in this tortoise seemed to be much thinner than when he first came in. Lu Ping thought to himself, it can't be, could it be because of the Samling 5 elements leaf absorbing the 5-colored light in these 2 months? But immediately Lu Ping denied this idea. Even if the speed at which the Samling 5 elements leaf absorbed the 5-colored light was really abnormal, there were at least 200 Dharma adepts in the tortoise, including the Ba Gue clan. Everyone relied on absorbing their own elemental yuan-qi to temper their own inner yuan, so the 5-colored light consumed was probably much more than the Samling 5 elements leaf. This was probably the reason why the five-colored light in the tortoise had become weak, but it did not attract the attention of the adepts in the tortoise. This situation must have also happened when the tortoise was opened before. Although the five-colored light had become a lot thinner, for Lu Ping, it was just that his eyes could see a little further when he used the three pure true pupils. In addition, after his divine thoughts were released, it was still in a distorted state, and he could not use it at all. The cover of the five-colored light made it impossible for anyone to see the whole picture of the five elements tortoise. Lu Ping took the opportunity to wander around the entire dojo, trying to see what was so special about this legendary dojo left by Taoist Gue. At the same time, he also hoped that he could get some treasures left by Taoist Gue. Although Lu Ping knew that for thousands of years, almost every cultivator who stepped into the five elements tortoise would have the same thought, and even if there were any treasures in this dojo, they would have long been found and obtained by others. But like the cultivators who came later, Lu Ping still couldn't help but take a look and search. Another 2 days passed, and the natural essence on the entire island suddenly became turbulent again. Startled, Lu Ping got up and rushed in the direction of the turbulence. When he got closer, he could already hear the sound of water splashing, which was obviously the sound of the essence chi tide. After avoiding the essence chi tide, Lu Ping slowly sneaked in from the other side. Because the five-colored light had become much thinner than before, Lu Ping was obviously more careful this time. "The five of you have found a good place. It took us a long time to find it." The faint voice in the distance startled Lu Ping. This voice was very familiar to Lu Ping. It was the Lingyun Valley's Friar Yi who had captured Ying Li previously. Under the cover of the five-colored light, Lu Ping slowly moved in the direction of the voice, but suddenly heard a slight sound beside him. Startled, he withdrew and retreated in the opposite direction. A moment later, a ray of light broke through the five-colored light, and the masked cultivator in cyan clothes had appeared where Lu Ping was previously. "Senior Brother Mu, why did you stop? Yuan Jinglei and Yi Zhiqiu have already blocked the five peacock girls. If we are late, I'm afraid that the two of them will play tricks." Friar Mu stretched out his hand to stop the few cultivators behind him from talking. He stood there quietly, thinking about something, or perhaps listening to something. After a moment, he suddenly opened his eyes and said with a smile, "I was too suspicious. When I came here just now, I seem to have heard some other voices, but don't worry. Although Yi Zhiqiu and Yuan Jinglei are not weak, they will not be able to win against the five peacock girls. If they want to break the great five elements divine light technique performed by the five peacock girls, how can it be possible without our whooshing school?" Another cultivator behind him said, "That's right. This operation was originally initiated by Senior Brother Mu, and the five elements feather should have been obtained by Senior Brother Mu. Now that Yi Zhiqiu and Yuan Jinglei obviously want to interfere, it's simply wishful thinking. Without our whooshing school's secret technique, when the five peacock girls join forces and perform the great five elements divine light technique, even a great cultivator would not dare to face it directly." Several people talked and laughed as they walked in the direction of the previous voice. Their figures disappeared into the five-colored light, and the voice became more and more distant. However, after a moment, the two people who had left before suddenly turned out of the five-colored light and investigated the area. In the end, they still found nothing. The two people looked at each other and then quickly chased after Friar Yi. After another moment, there was still no movement here. At this time, under the cover of the five-colored light, Lu Ping had already changed direction and approached the direction of the previous voice. Lu Ping's eyes gradually glowed with a green light. After he refined the Jade Sobering Eye Serum, the 9 spirit liquids required for the 3 Pure One's true pupils gradually fused together. As a result, when Lu Ping cast the 3 Pure One's true pupils, with all his might, the green light in his eyes grew weaker. At this time, the situation of the 5 Yang clan sisters reflected in Lu Ping's eyes did not look very good. A group of 7 or 8 people led by 2 cultivators were confronting the Yang clan sisters, and in the hands of Friar Yi of the Lingyun Valley, the youngest of the 5 sisters, Yang Shujun, was currently being held in his arms. Her cultivation had long been imprisoned, and she was also unconscious. This was also why Friar Yi and the others were not worried that the Yang clan sisters would escape. On the side of the Yang clan sisters, there was an extremely fine formation engraved on the ground. The 5 Yang clan sisters stood on the nodes of the formation, but at this time, the youngest Yang Shujun was being held hostage by Friar Yi. It seemed that the Yang clan sisters should have been hiding here, relying on the formation engraved on the ground and their 5 elemental talents to restrain the vitality tide during the process of cultivation. This was also why Lu Ping had not been able to detect the vitality tide during this period of time. Originally, Lu Ping thought that the 5 sisters might have retreated from the 5 elements Tortoise Cave, or that their life feather had been seized by others. He did not expect that they had been hiding here to cultivate, and these people who coveted the 5 sisters' life feather had obviously been persevering in tracking their whereabouts in the Tortoise Cave. Finally, Friar Yi discovered the location of the 5 sisters' cultivation place, so he took the opportunity to attack and hold the youngest Yang Shujun hostage. Not only did this make the other 4 sisters hesitate to attack, but the most troublesome thing was that the 5 elements divine light technique, which was activated by the 5 elements formation formed by the 5 sisters, could not be used because Yang Shujun was held hostage. In front of the 4 sisters, Friar Yi pushed aside Yang Shujun's hair bun in his arms, pulled out a hairpin, and infused it with spiritual essence. Immediately, it turned into an earthy yellow feather. It was Yang Shujun's life feather. Ignoring the scolding and cursing of Yang Lijun and Yang Rujuan, Friar Yi waved the feather in front of him and said, "My 4 friends, watch carefully. If you want to keep your youngest sister alive, you will have to exchange your life feather for her life." Chapter 11:15. Friar Yi looked triumphantly at the ashen-faced Yang clan's 4 women. Then, he glanced at the small cauldron on top of Yang Huajun's head, and greed flashed in his eyes. However, Friar Yi quickly concealed this greed. Right now, the most important thing was to obtain the 5 elements tail feathers. However, with this little girl in his hands, he was not afraid that they would not submit. Although the idea of seizing the life tail feathers of the 5 Yang clan sisters was part of Friar Mu's plan, who would have thought that he would be able to capture the youngest of the 5 sisters, Yang Shujun, and directly extort them? If he succeeded, then the life tail feathers would naturally belong to him. After all, from the beginning until the end, whether it was Yuan Jinglei or Mu Changsheng, neither of them had made the slightest effort to seize the life tail feathers. Didn't that mean that if he obtained the 5 elements tail feathers, the 2 of them would have to obey him? After putting the earth tail feather into his pocket, Yuan Jinglei's eyes inadvertently flashed with a sharp light. Friar Yi then shouted, "Do you really not want her life? Quickly hand over the other 4 tail feathers." The other 3 women looked at Yang Huajun, who had a cold expression, as if waiting for her to make a decision. When Friar Yi suddenly attacked and kidnapped Yang Shujun, causing the 5 elements formation to collapse and causing the vitality tide, Yang Huajun hurriedly took out the small cauldron on top of her head. It was also because of this small cauldron that the vitality tide caused by the collapse of the 5 elements formation did not affect the 4 people. At the same time, in order not to hurt the kidnapped Yang Shujun, Yang Huajun could only control the small cauldron to make the vitality tide avoid Friar Yi and the others. However, after this, Yang Huajun stood there coldly and stared at Friar Yi. The small cauldron was still hanging above her head. If it was not for the fact that Friar Yi had Yang Shujun as a hostage in his hand, it was likely that he would have been terrified by Yang Huajun's gaze. Yang Huajun could not help but say, "Big sister. Ha 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 ha, wonderful, wonderful." At this moment, a long laugh interrupted Yang Huajun's words. When she turned around, she saw the azure-clothed masked cultivator who had ambushed them twice break through the rainbow light with a few of his subordinates. He said to Cultivator Yi, "Brother Yi is quite capable. You've saved us a lot of effort." When Friar Yi saw the masked cultivator in green, there was an inexplicable light in his eyes, but his face had a happy expression. He said, "Mu Gu came at the right time. These 5 peacocks have been captured by me, so I don't have to worry about them not giving in." At this time, Yuan Jinglei, who had been standing on the other side with his face covered, suddenly said, "Exactly." Brother Yi has already obtained a basic feather from the smallest peacock. So, as long as the remaining 4 peacocks hand over their feathers, it will be a success. When Brother Tsing Yi heard Yuan Jinglei's words, he was startled. When he looked at Friar Yi again, his gaze became somewhat thought-provoking. On the other side, Friar Yi narrowed his eyes and glanced at Yuan Jinglei. Then, he smiled at Friar Mu and said, "Exactly. The remaining feathers will depend on Mu Ji's methods." After saying that, Friar Yi released the unconscious Yang Shujun in his arms. Yang Shujun immediately fell to the ground. Friar Yi clapped his hands and stood to the side. Obviously, he wanted to give this bargaining chip to Friar Yi, but he did not take out the earth attribute feather. However, although Friar Yi let go of Yang Shujun, she had fallen to the ground behind these people. Even if Yang Huajun and the others wanted to help, they could not do so. Friar Mu looked at Friar Yi with a smile. He took 2 steps forward and was about to open his mouth to negotiate with Yang Huajun when he suddenly felt something strange behind him. He quickly turned around and saw a figure shrouded in an aqua-blue light screen suddenly jump out from the colorful light screen and rush toward Yang Shujun, who had fallen to the ground. "Who is it?" Friar Mu shouted and stamped his feet. Several tree vines, flashing with different colors, rose from the ground and lashed out at the figure flying toward him. At that moment, Yuan Jinglei and Friar Yi also noticed the situation behind them. They each activated their Dharma idol and were about to attack the person when they suddenly saw Yang Huajun making the first move. Immediately after, the other 3 women followed suit. Clearly, because they had also noticed the situation behind them, Yuan Jinglei, Friar Yi, and the other cultivators had no choice but to turn around and block the attacks from the 5 women. The colorful vines summoned by Friar Mu lashed out at the attacker. However, dozens of water ropes suddenly emerged from the aqua-blue light screen. They were like a jellyfish waving its tentacles. The ropes entangled with the colorful vines, but the attacker had already bypassed the obstruction of the colorful vines. A blue light flashed and Yang Shujun, who was on the ground, disappeared. "Scoundrel, you're courting death." Friar Mu was shocked and angry. He leaped up and chased after the attacker. However, he saw that a huge, 5-colored vortex had suddenly formed around the figure in front of him. The surrounding 5 elements Yuan Qi quickly gathered in the vortex. In the blink of an eye, the 5 elements Yuan Qi within a radius of 10 feet was suddenly swallowed by the vortex. Friar Mu exclaimed again. Such a huge wave of Yuan Qi was immediately transmitted to the entire 5 elements tortoise. The 5 elements Yuan Qi in the entire tortoise began to fluctuate and then gathered in the direction of the vortex. Rumbling sounds immediately sounded from all directions. This was the arrival of the Yuan Qi tide. Not only Friar Mu, but the others were also shocked. Even the practitioners in the 5 elements tortoise who were cultivating in seclusion were alarmed. With such a strong absorption of Yuan Qi, could it be that the peacock royalty had sent 5 Dharma adepts who belonged to the 5 elements? The 4 peacock girls also exclaimed in surprise. Such a large-scale activation of the hidden turtle 5 elements Yuan Qi was probably only possible when the 5 of them joined forces to perform the great 5 elements divine light technique. However, they did not expect the person in front of them to be able to do it with his own strength. Who was this person? Could he be a senior of their tribe? Yang Huajun glanced at the distant figure. The small cauldron above his head suddenly began to spin violently. He shouted at his 3 sisters, "Come here quickly!" The 4 girls gathered together and fled to the periphery. Friar Mu and the others did not care about their natal feathers. They all fled in different directions. Obviously, they all had their own methods to resist the vitality tide, but no one dared to chase after the blue figure. The moment the huge 5-element vortex appeared, it mobilized all of the 5-element Yuan Qi in the entire 5-element tortoise vault. Then, the blue-robed cultivator pointed at it and it collapsed. However, at this moment, the Yuan Qi tide had already formed and was gathering towards him from all directions. The blue figure took the opportunity to fly forward. A wine cauldron rose above his head. A little girl bared her fangs and brandished her claws in the cauldron. No one knew what she was complaining about, but streams of light still flowed from the wine cauldron in all directions and enveloped the blue figure. At the same time, the vitality tide in front of him had already rushed towards him. The blue figure was fearless and directly crashed into the vitality tide. Before this, the figure drew a line beside him and a space door suddenly split open. Another invisible vortex began to form. However, this time, the invisible vortex was pathetically small. It was obvious that the blue figure had deliberately controlled its size. Rumble. The surging waves of world essence finally calmed down after they converged. Lu Ping charged out from the periphery of one of the waves that hadn't completely calmed down yet. With a wave of his hand, the small, invisible vortex beside him was instantly annihilated. After looking around and confirming that no one was watching, Lu Ping first used his divine sense to penetrate the back mountain of the golden house. He saw that the entire stem of the Samling 5 Elements leaf was shining with a dazzling 5-colored brilliance. Around the 8 leaves was a 5-colored dew, but there was still no trace of the 9th leaf. This made Lu Ping very frustrated. He did not expect that when he completely released the restrictions of the Samling 5 Elements leaf and instantly swallowed a large amount of the 5 Elements tortoise light, causing a large-scale vitality tide in the entire 5 Elements tortoise, it still could not produce the 9th Samling 5 Elements leaf. In the wine cauldron at the side, Ling Long had already begun to complain loudly. This time, passing through the vitality tide had really consumed a lot of her energy. At this moment, she was already clamoring to return to the core space to recuperate. Lu Ping put away the wine cauldron, and then, after thinking for a while, he waved his hand towards the ground. A young girl suddenly appeared on the ground. It was Yang Shujun. Seeing that the girl still did not wake up, Lu Ping turned around and bypassed the center where the vitality tide had gathered and walked in another direction. It was the place where the 4 young clan sisters had left. The vitality tide of the entire 5 Elements tortoise was triggered, and the emergence of a large-scale vitality tide naturally alarmed most of the cultivators who were cultivating in the tortoise. However, as the vitality tide subsided, the 5 Elements light blocked the cultivators' divine sense and vision, causing many cultivators who came to investigate to return in vain. Instead, there were a lot of misunderstandings. Even now, there were still many places where the roar of magic spells and magic weapons could be heard. Lu Ping carefully bypassed these chaotic areas, causing trouble for himself. After a moment, a faint glow appeared in Lu Ping's eyes, and he seemed to see 4 slender and graceful figures not far away. Lu Ping deliberately made some noise and walked towards the 4 people unhurriedly. He heard Yang Rujuan's voice. "Is it Lu Daoyu in front?" Lu Ping smiled. "Yes, it is me. I've kept the 4 of you waiting." Lu Ping's words clearly made the 4 vigilant figures in front of him relax a little. While speaking, Lu Ping had already passed through the light and arrived in front of the 4 sisters. "The 4 of you. We meet again." Lu Ping smiled slightly. Fire Peacock Yang Li Jun, who was at the side, could not hold back any longer. She hurriedly asked, "Where is my little sister? Big sister said that you had sent her a voice transmission beforehand, so we helped you. Why don't you see my little sister?" Chapter 11:16. 4th Sister. Don't be impatient. The one who spoke was the wooden peacock, Yang Wanjun. She was a beautiful and gentle woman. Among the 5 young clan sisters, she rarely had her own words. However, whenever she spoke up, even Yang Huajun would rarely ignore her. "If Lu Daoyu hadn't saved little sister, you wouldn't have come to see us." Lu Ping smiled at Yang Wanjun. This time, Lu Ping saw the other side of this woman, a needle hidden in silk floss. Lu Ping flicked his sleeves slightly, and Yang Shujun suddenly appeared in front of them. However, she still looked unconscious. "Little sister." Yang Li Jun was the first to run over and hold Yang Shujun in her arms. She did not care about Lu Ping at all. If Lu Ping were to attack now, he could easily capture her. She was really impatient. Yang Huajun and Yang Wanjun naturally knew how dangerous Yang Li Jun was at the moment. Judging from the fact that Lu Ping had rescued Yang Shujun previously, Lu Ping had obviously been hiding at the side for some time. At this time, Lu Ping already knew about those people's plot against the 5 peacock women. At this time, although Lu Ping had rescued young Shujun, no one knew what Lu Ping was thinking. If he also held young Shujun hostage to extort their natal feathers, he would be no different from Friar Yi and the masked cultivator in green. However, when they saw that Lu Ping allowed young Li Jun to carry young Shujun back, the other 3 were more or less relieved. They looked at Lu Ping with kindness and gratitude. "Thank you, Brother Lu, for saving us." Young Huajun thanked Lu Ping. On the side, young Huajun had already taken his little sister from 4th sister young Li Jun. He tried to undo the seal on young Shujun and save her from the coma. However, young Huajun performed several kinds of Dharma spells in succession to no avail. Seeing this, young Huajun also tried a few sets of Dharma spells, but she still could not save young Shujun from the coma. Young Huajun looked up at Lu Ping. Although he did not say anything, his meaning was clear. Lu Ping spread his hands and said, "I didn't do anything. Your sister was already like this when I saved her." Young Huajun also said, "Big sister, Lu Dao would not do this." Young Huajun shook his head and said, "That's not what I meant. I was asking if Lu Dao could help my little sister to wake her up." Lu Ping smiled embarrassedly and said, "I misunderstood. Let's wait and see. I'm not completely confident." Lu Ping stepped forward and smiled at young Huajun. Then, he penetrated young Shujun's body with his divine sense. At such a close distance, Lu Ping was not worried about the distortion of the 5 elements light. After a while, Lu Ping frowned and looked a little solemn. Next to him, young Rujuan could not help but say, "Why? Does Lu Daoyu also find it difficult?" Lu Ping did not speak. Instead, he formed a seal with both hands. A blue light flashed with a charming halo and hit young Shujun's body. Young Shujun's body suddenly trembled, startling the other 4 women. They all looked at Lu Ping and asked Lu Ping. Lu Ping rubbed his chin. Then, as if he thought of something, he formed another seal with both hands and a thick true essence imprinted on young Shujun's body. "Oh!" Young Shujun's face showed a painful expression, but she still did not wake up. "That's strange." Lu Ping muttered to himself. Fellow Yang has clearly regained consciousness, but she still cannot wake up. That Friar Ye's method is very strange. It seems that Miss Yang's true essence bloodline has been cut off, and this has affected the Dharma form in the core space. That's why she can't wake up. Yang Huajun and the others all looked at Yang Wanjun, as if waiting for her to explain something. Yang Wanjun pondered for a moment and said, "According to Lu Daoyu, the strange seal that little sister is under has a lot to do with the Lingyun Valley's blood-scraping technique." Lu Ping was shocked. This was the second time he had heard of this blood-scraping technique. When Yang Huajun and the others heard this secret technique, their expressions changed greatly. Yang Lijun even cried out in alarm, blood-scraping technique? Doesn't that mean little sister has already? Before she could finish, young Lijun's eyes were about to burst into tears. Young Wanjun patted her younger sister and said, "Fourth younger sister, you're always so impatient. You have to listen to older sister finish speaking. I only said that this sealing technique might be derived from the blood-shaving physiognomy technique. Did I say that this person used the blood-shaving physiognomy technique? Besides, we were all present at the time. Did that cultivator surnamed use this technique on Xiaomei?" Yang Huajun grunted coldly from the side and said, blood-scraping technique, and his surname is Yi. Then this person is definitely the orange light Yi Zhiqiu of the Lingyun Valley's 7 rays of light. What a Lingyun Valley! What a Yi Zhiqiu! They actually dared to set their sights on my peacock royalty. Lu Ping hesitated for a moment and said, "Fellow Taoist Yang, this matter might be related to the orange light Yi Zhiqiu, but it might not be the doing of the Lingyun Valley. It might just be a private action of that Yi Zhiqiu." Yang Huajun glanced at Lu Ping and said, "Naturally, it can't be the doing of the Lingyun Valley. These people are divided into at least 3 groups, and that Yi Zhiqiu is merely the leader of one of them. If the Lingyun Valley wants to scheme for the life plume feathers of us 5 sisters, then there is naturally no need for them to ally with others. But even so, I, the peacock royalty, will punish them for the crime of not strictly disciplining them." After listening to this, Lu Ping was secretly speechless. Only the peacock royalty would dare to punish the 5 holy lands for a crime. However, this was also because the peacock royalty was in the right. Yang Huajun was attentive. When Lu Ping and Yang Huajun were talking, she had already detected something from Lu Ping's expression. So she said, "My sister, if Lu Daoyu has the confidence, then it's fine. If it's possible, then I hope that Lu Daoyu will lend a hand." Lu Ping smiled bitterly and said, "I do have a way, but it's only 70% sure." Yang Huajun immediately said, "Please help me, fellow Taoist." Lu Ping nodded awkwardly, then pointed a finger at Yang Shujun's chest. Yang Huajun and the others were startled when they saw this. Only Yang Huajun's expression did not change. When Lu Ping pointed his finger at Yang Shujun's chest, a strong real core along with his own divine sense instantly penetrated into Yang Shujun's core space. At this time, in Yang Shujun's core space, an orange-yellow peacock Dharma power floated listlessly in the center of the core space. There was a strange power in this space. This power was like a blade carried by the wind, constantly brushing against Yang Shujun's Dharma power. Every time this power brushed past, the entire Dharma power would feel as if it had been scraped from head to toe by a blade. Could this be the essence of the Yin blood scraping technique? Lu Ping thought to himself, but the spell did not slow down. The thick real core that was injected into the core space turned into a monstrous wave that instantly broke through the impact of this strange power on the core space. At the same time, Lu Ping's huge wave of real core circled in the space, firmly protecting the peacock core space. At this moment, Lu Ping's divine sense suddenly formed a projection in Yang Shujun's core space that was similar to Lu Ping's dragon core space. This projection opened its mouth and let out a loud roar that resounded through the void, instantly shattering the source of this power. At the same time, it also awakened the listless peacock core space. After the long roar, the projection of the dragon core space dissipated in Yang Shujun's core space. After the peacock core space woke up, only then did it realize that the strange power had been broken. The core space of the peacock core space quickly communicated with the real core space in the blood. Suddenly, several strange lights lit up on Yang Shujun's body, and then the protective barrier was shattered and dissipated. Lu Ping's closed eyes suddenly opened, and he hurriedly withdrew his hand and stepped back. Yang Shujun had already woken up when she opened her eyes. "Little sister, you're awake." Yang Shujun's awakening excited the 5 sisters for a while. When the 5 sisters finally calmed down, Yang Shujun had already learned about how Lu Ping had saved her. Her face was red as she came over to Lu Ping to thank him. Lu Ping repeatedly said that he wouldn't dare, and then said, "In fact, I originally came here with a request. Saving fellow Yang was just a coincidence." Yang Huajun still had a calm expression on her face and said, "Fellow Taoist, please speak your mind. As long as the 5 of us can do it, we will definitely not refuse." Lu Ping said, "Then I will speak frankly. In fact, I originally wanted to ask the 5 of you for some core space essence." When Lu Ping saw the 5 women's expressions immediately change, he hurriedly explained, "The core space essence that I am asking for is not much. At most, the 5 of you will only need to cultivate for a few more days to completely replenish the core space essence that you have lost. It will not have any negative impact on your cultivation base." At this time, the 5 women's expressions became much better. At this time, Yang Wanjun asked, "If fellow Taoist doesn't need a lot of our core space essence, it is not impossible. I wonder if fellow Taoist can tell me what the core space essence is for? Could it be that fellow Taoist also wants to refine the invisible spirit light fan?" Lu Ping was surprised and said, "Using the invisible core space essence to refine the invisible spirit light fan? I am not refining it, nor do I know how to refine it. I only have other uses for it. However, please forgive me, it is not convenient for me to disclose the uses of your core space essence." Yang Huajun turned to look at the golden peacock, Yang Huajun, and saw that Yang Huajun had already stretched out her lily-white hand. The golden core space essence began to condense in her palm, gradually condensing into the shape of a drop of water. Yang Huajun flicked the core space essence in her palm, and the golden bead flew towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping carefully used a spirit sealing box to place the drop of core space essence inside. When the other 4 women saw this, they all condensed a drop of core space essence in their palms or fingertips. Lu Ping used a spirit sealing box to collect the drop of core space essence. Only then did he happily say, "With the help of the 5 Taoists, my plan may be successful. Thank you, fellow Taoists." It was still Yang Wanjun who said, "Compared to fellow Taoists saving little sister, this is nothing." Chapter 11:17. With the 5 peacock girls' chi in hand, Lu Ping bade farewell and left. Although Yang Wanjun tried her best to persuade him to stay, at this time, there were countless practitioners in the 5 elements tortoise plotting against the 5 sisters. Lu Ping was not willing to implicate himself in the flames of war, so he used the excuse of being in a hurry to train to leave. Although Yang Shujun had lost her life-tail feather, the peacock clan's life-tail feather could be regrown after it was lost. Furthermore, it could be regrown twice during one's advancement to the mid-Dharma stage and the late Dharma stage. It was just that it would take a long time for it to reach its current level of power. Lu Ping's request for the 5 peacock girls' chi was actually a spur-of-the-moment idea. When he saw Friar Yi of the Lingyun Valley pluck out the life-tail feather that had turned into a hairpin from the unconscious Yang Shujun's head, an idea came to Lu Ping's mind for no reason. They were all condensing the chi of the 5 peacock girls. If the chi of the 5 peacock girls condensed together, would it be able to give the Samling 5 elements leaf the opportunity to form the 9th leaf? This idea was originally just a spur-of-the-moment thought by Lu Ping. Unexpectedly, after going through this idea in his mind, Lu Ping suddenly added another reason to this idea: spirituality. The Samling 5 elements leaf grew from the path of planting. Before that, it had always been using the 5 elements of heaven and earth. Other than the chi of the origin, the heaven and earth spirit condensed within the heaven and earth spirit was naturally the spirituality within it. Lu Ping used the Linglong wine cauldron to suppress the chi of the 5 elements and let the Samling 5 elements leaf absorb it. The 5 elements tortoise had enough chi of the 5 elements, but there was not the slightest spirituality within it. The Samling 5 elements leaf was able to advance from a 7-leaf spirit herb to an 8-leaf spirit herb. It was most likely that the spirituality that it had accumulated through absorbing other spirit herbs had been completely used up. After that, Lu Ping took advantage of the chaos in the 5 elements tortoise to attract the chi of the vitality tide to pour into the Samling 5 elements leaf. However, this spirit herb was only able to grow into a 5-colored rainbow, but it was still unable to condense the 9th leaf. Although Lu Ping only obtained a single drop of the original essence from the 5 Yang sisters, it was still more than enough for the 5 sisters. Compared to the 5 sisters, it was insignificant, but the spirituality contained in it was more than enough. As the princesses of the peacock royalty, the cultivation of the 5 sisters was naturally not weak. In Lu Ping's view, the 5 sisters had at least condensed an 8th-grade golden core before advancing to the Dharma phase. Yang Huajun and Yang Wanjun might even have condensed a 9th-grade golden core. The spirituality of their chi of the origin was naturally extremely impressive. After advancing to the avatar realm, a cultivator's essence would experience a drastic increase in strength. Therefore, although the essence the 5 sisters gave Lu Ping was only a small drop, the spirituality contained in it was probably not inferior to a high-grade heaven-class spirit item. Lu Ping's eyes lit up as he stared at the scene in front of him. It was a pity that this chi of the origin was tied to the attribute of the person's inner yuan. If others used it, they could only condense it into a ball of inner yuan. Otherwise, cultivators would not have to painstakingly search for spiritual objects. The Dharma adepts would only need to give up a little bit of the chi of the origin. Although cultivators could not use the chi of the origin, it did not mean that the Samling 5 elements leaf could not be used. After all, the Samling 5 elements leaf was not a cultivator, and there was no inner yuan in its body. Therefore, after the chi of the origin was injected into it, it naturally could not be considered a ball of inner yuan. Even so, Lu Ping was still a little nervous, so he was a little hesitant. But after thinking about it, He did not know when he would encounter such an opportunity again. So, he gritted his teeth and dripped the 5 drops of chi of the origin around the samling 5 elements leaf according to the positions of the 5 elements. At this time, all Lu Ping could do was wait. Because Lu Ping had previously poured as much chi of the 5 elements into the samling 5 elements leaf, hoping to accelerate the growth of the 9th leaf. Although he did not succeed, the 8 leaves had condensed a lot of 5-colored dewdrops. They dripped into the soil below the samling 5 elements leaf, gradually forming a pool of 5-colored spiritual liquid. After the 5 drops of chi of the origin merged with the 5-colored spiritual liquid, it was suspended above the samling 5 elements leaf. At this time, the wood Luan golden core, which was at the late stage of core forging, suddenly began to rotate rapidly. A mass of essence seeped out from the golden core and fell onto the samling 5 elements leaf. The wood Luan golden core itself began to shrink at an extremely fast speed. At this time, Lu Ping suddenly discovered that between the 7th and 8th leaves, a 5-colored light suddenly lit up. Even when Lu Ping used the 3 pure true eyes, he could not see through the situation. Lu Ping had to close his eyes under the stimulation of the increasingly intense light. When he felt the light converge, before he could open his eyes, Lu Ping already felt a small sprout appear between the 2 leaves. Lu Ping was overjoyed. Indeed, his guess was not wrong. The key to the growth of the 9th leaf was the 5 drops of chi of the origin. Perhaps it was because the 5 drops of chi of the 5 elements were originally of the same origin. If it was any other Dharma adept, even if they managed to gather enough chi of the 5 elements, they would not be able to grow the spirit plant due to the conflict between their inner yuan. It was even possible that the plant would be destroyed. Of course, this was just Lu Ping's guess. Since he had succeeded this time, he naturally would not take it seriously. He would experiment with other methods. If he failed, it would not be worth it. As the wood phoenix's golden elixir continued to shrink, the 9th leaf also continued to grow. Fortunately, Lu Ping had accumulated enough chi of the 5 elements to support the growth of this leaf. However, Lu Ping still took the reluctant Linglong out of the core space and used her to suppress the chi of the 5 elements around her. He then guided the chi of the 5 elements into the door of the golden house and poured it into the samling 5 elements leaf. The excess chi of the 5 elements leaf would condense into 5-colored dewdrops and fall to the ground. These 5-colored dewdrops were formed by the condensation of chi of the 5 elements. Although Lu Ping did not know what other uses these dewdrops had other than to samling the 5 elements leaf, it was obvious that these dewdrops were extremely rare. There was no harm in storing more. Another 3 months passed. At this time, the 9th leaf had already grown to 6 inches long. Compared to the other 9 inches long leaves, it was only a third of its original length. The time spent on this was far less than the time used to nurture this object with a high-grade heaven-level spirit item. In these 3 months, the tide of vitality occurred a few more times. Every time it erupted, it would cause a chaotic battle in the 5 elements tortoise. Lu Ping even felt the aura of a Dharma adept once. Although the 5 elements light distorted the divine will, making it impossible for Lu Ping to confirm the exact location of the Dharma adept's aura, it was enough to shock Lu Ping. He did not expect that even a Dharma adept would be involved. He did not know if these battles were also because of the 5 elements spiritual light fan. However, what puzzled Lu Ping was that at this time, the 5 peacock girls had obviously become the prey of others. Why did they not hide or think of a way to get out of the 5 elements tortoise in advance to avoid the danger? Instead, they repeatedly triggered the tide of vitality. However, to trigger the tide of vitality, the 5 sisters had to work together to finally form it. Since they triggered the tide of vitality several times, it meant that the 5 sisters had not been separated and had not been captured again. Could it be that the 5 sisters still had some trump card? At this time, they were using themselves as bait to take revenge on the cultivators who were plotting for their own life feather. Or perhaps the cultivators of the peacock royalty in the 5 elements tortoise had rushed over and contacted the 5 peacock sisters. They deliberately set up this trap to take back Yang Shujun's lost life feather and at the same time vent the anger of the 5 sisters. In the face of this kind of chaotic battle, Lu Ping naturally hid as far as he could. In Lu Ping's view, these cultivators who participated in the chaotic battle were not easy to deal with. The strength and background behind them were not something that Jinling could compare with. Fortunately, the entire area of the Five Elements tortoise was large enough. After another 3 months, the 9th leaf finally grew to 9 inches long. Lu Ping was overjoyed. He saw the whole spirit herb suddenly burst into colorful light, followed by the exclamation of Linglong's wine cauldron. Quickly seal the space entrance. It can't be suppressed anymore. Lu Ping was startled. He immediately noticed that the moment the Samling Five Elements leaf grew to the great perfection, it triggered a turbulence in the light of the Five Elements. Although there was the suppression of the wine cauldron, the turbulence was so strong that the scope of the impact had far exceeded the limit that the wine cauldron could suppress. Suddenly there was a tsunami in the surroundings, and the tide of vitality was formed again, and the scale was huge. Linglong shouted, "Aya, I can't control it anymore." Immediately after, it crashed into Lu Ping's core space. The surrounding tide of vitality was already rushing towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping subconsciously wanted to seal the space entrance of the Golden House, but he found that when the tide of vitality was only 500 feet away from Lu Ping, it suddenly changed direction and swept past both sides of Lu Ping. However, within a 500 feet radius of Lu Ping, there was no strong turbulence at all. There was only the gentle but vast light that was like water gathering towards the Samling Five Elements leaf in the space entrance from all directions. Lu Ping was shocked. He knew that the movement he made this time was too big, even more tyrannical than the scale of the previous tide of vitality. However, at this time, the Samling Five Elements leaf seemed to have entered a crazy stage of absorbing the light of the Five Elements. Moreover, Lu Ping could also feel that the spirit herb seemed to be gradually becoming saturated with the light of the Five Elements. Finally, the multicolored light that filled the sky began to recede, leaving behind 3 finger-sized multicolored light balls. When the light dissipated again, Lu Ping's face lit up with joy and he said, "So it's this thing." On the stem of the Samling Five Elements leaf, there were 3 small fruits that were overflowing with purple qi, slightly bending the 8th and 9th leaves. These 3 small fruits were exactly the same as the seeds that Lu Ping had used to nurture the Samling Five Elements leaf in front of him. Chapter 11:18. Lu Ping placed a spirit sealing box under the 3 seeds. Then, he carefully touched it with his finger, and the 3 seeds fell into the spirit sealing box. After closing the box, Lu Ping seemed to be a little worried. He cast a few more spells on the box before putting it away. At this time, Lu Ping finally had time to look at the Samling Five Elements leaf that had stopped absorbing the 5 elements Yuan Qi. At this time, there was a small pool of 5 elements Yuan Qi formed by the 5 elements due on the ground around the spirit herb. Lu Ping carefully pulled the spirit herb from the ground and was about to put it into the spirit sealing box. Suddenly, he found that in the core space, the Dharma form of the dragon was moving left and right, as if it wanted to come out. It seemed to be interested in the spirit herb that was floating in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping's heart moved, and the Samling Five Elements leaf in front of him suddenly disappeared. When it reappeared, it was already in his core space. At this time, Lu Ping's divine sense discovered that the Dharma form of the dragon had suddenly circled around. Its slender body had already coiled around the Samling Five Elements leaf in the center. The Dharma form only circled around the spirit herb once, as if it was confirming what the thing in front of it was. Then, he saw the Dharma form of the dragon suddenly open its mouth and spit out a perfectly round spirit pearl. It was the pure yang pearl that the Dharma form of the dragon usually used to play. As the pure yang pearl hovered above the 3 spirits' 5 elements leaf, a dense wave of pure yang qi suddenly descended, enveloping the spiritual herb. At this time, the Samling Five Elements leaf also seemed to have a spirit of its own. A 5-colored light diffused from the spirit herb, blocking the invasion of the pure yang qi. The 2 suddenly fell into a stalemate. Just at this moment, the Dharma idol of the dragon seemed to be a little impatient. As it circled, one of its claws suddenly reached out and fiercely pressed down on the pure yang pearl. The pure yang qi that it spat out suddenly became 30% denser and immediately suppressed the multicolored light. Then, the pure yang qi continued to press down and immediately wrapped around the entire spirit herb. After a flash of light, the spirit herb had already appeared in the center of the pure yang pearl. At this time, the Dharma form of the dragon finally retracted its claws. The five-colored light on the Samling Five Elements leaf that was trapped in the pure yang pearl suddenly lit up. Unexpectedly, countless runes suddenly lit up on the pure yang pearl. These were the runes that had been imprinted on the pure yang pearl before. Moreover, the main runes were the runes of the pure yang pearl. The two runes of the pure yang pearl continuously wandered on the surface of the pure yang pearl. Then, they intertwined with each other and formed a seal rune array on the surface of the pure yang pearl. This seal once again suppressed the five-colored light of the Samling Five Elements leaf. Only then did the light of the seal rune array slowly extinguish. Lu Ping's heart stirred. He knew that the two pure yang pearl seeds were not destroyed. Moreover, they could still be used. Only then did he slowly let out a sigh of relief. At this time, when the Samling Five Elements leaf condensed its seeds, it had already attracted the attention of many people. Because the density of the five-colored light was constantly decreasing, Lu Ping could clearly see that a few thousand feet away, there were already cultivators cautiously approaching. Lu Ping did not dare to stay here any longer. After temporarily sealing the space door of the House of Gold, he leaped into the light and headed elsewhere. From the time when the pure yang pearl was triggered to the time when Lu Ping absorbed the Samling Five Elements leaf into the pure yang pearl, it had only been a short while. However, when Lu Ping headed out, he was blocked by three people in succession. Apart from one of them who was only at the early Dharma stage and had been severely injured by Lu Ping, the other two were at the mid-Dharma stage. Lu Ping used the thin water sword and the shapeless water sword respectively to protect himself. Only then did the two of them retreat. However, when Lu Ping exchanged blows with these three people, the cultivators who were heading towards the pure yang pearl still sensed the direction of the pure yang pearl. One by one, they chased after Lu Ping. Lu Ping hardened his heart and grabbed the struggling Ling Long from the core space. Then, he slapped the wine tripod with all his might. Ling Long's wine tripod began to spin again. Because it was spinning so fast, there was a slight tremor. The five-colored light in the surroundings was once again triggered, and the pure yang pearl was formed again. However, this time, it did not gather towards Lu Ping. Then, as if being pushed by the wine tripod, it formed a huge wave and rushed towards Lu Ping's back. Behind him, there were several cries of shock and curses. Lu Ping ignored them and changed his direction. Once again, he hid in the light and hurriedly left. After much difficulty, Lu Ping finally found a safe place to hide. He cast his divine sense into the golden house and looked at the pool of five elemental essence liquid that was left behind after the spirit herbs were plucked. Lu Ping took out the jade essence bottle and poured all the five elemental essence liquid into the jade bottle. He poured 3 bottles of 5 elemental essence liquid into the jade bottle before he could absorb all the 5 elemental essence liquid on the ground. He opened the spirit sealing box that contained the Samling 5 elemental leaf seed. The seed that had just been plucked had now turned into a jade green color. Lu Ping took out one of the seeds and planted it in the place where the Samling 5 elemental leaf seed was. Then, he placed 5 low-grade profound-level spirit items around the seed according to the order of the 5 elements. Then, he poured several types of pure yang pearl on the seed. However, Lu Ping still seemed to be a little hesitant. After thinking for a while, he suddenly made up his mind. He took out another spirit sealing box from his storage magic tool. After opening it, there were only 2 pills left, one big and one small. These 2 pills were the only 2 with Luan gold cores that Lu Ping had left. One was left by an early-stage core forging gold core, and the other was from a mid-stage core forging gold core. Originally, there was still a late stage with Luan gold core of the best quality. However, when Lu Ping was trying to grow the 9-leaf Samling 5 elemental leaf, it was used up. Lu Ping took out the early stage with Luan gold core. Then, he used a secret technique to guide the essence of the gold core to pour into the seed. In just 2 days, the seed of the samling 5 elemental leaf germinated and grew again, spitting out the first leaf. This was 1 day less than when Lu Ping used to grow the samling 5 elemental leaf. After Lu Ping replaced the mid-grade profound level spirit items, the second leaf grew again in just 4 or 5 days. Lu Ping raised his eyebrows. He found that in the 5 elements tortoise, the 5 elements glow itself really had the effect of shortening the maturity period of the samling 5 elemental leaf, but compared with the wood Luan gold core, it seemed to be a little lacking. Lu Ping once again replaced 5 high-grade profound level spirit items. However, only 7 or 8 days later, the entire 5 elements tortoise suddenly began to shake violently. This time, it was not because someone was fighting or someone had triggered the vitality tide, but because the entire tortoise was shaking. Lu Ping was startled. He knew that this was a sign that Xiang Shiping had told him that the 5 elements tortoise was going to hide in the void again. At this time, it was the time for the cultivators who entered the tortoise to leave. As Lu Ping flew out, he took out a talisman from his storage device and activated it. A strange wave suddenly spread out. After about half an hour, the wave returned again. Then, Lu Ping seemed to have determined the direction and turned to run forward. The talisman in Lu Ping's hand was left by Bague Xiang Shiping. If Xiang Shiping hadn't left it to Lu Ping wouldn't even know that the Bague clan could actually communicate with each other through a secret method in the 5 elements tortoise. After Lu Ping activated this talisman, it would soon form a connection with Xiang Shiping, so that Lu Ping could quickly determine his position and meet up with him as soon as possible. However, the Bague clan obviously had another gathering place in the 5 elements tortoise, because from beginning to end, Lu Ping didn't find any trace of a Bague in this tortoise. Obviously, as the direct descendant of Taoist Gue, the Bague clan had another gathering place in the 5 elements tortoise that was unknown to outsiders. Moreover, under the pervading light of the 5 elements tortoise, this talisman could still be activated and pointed out the location of Xiang Shiping to Lu Ping. Perhaps only the Bague clan could do this. Along the way, Lu Ping also saw many cultivators flying out of the tortoise. Most of them had covered their faces, and when they met, they would glance at each other for a while before going their own way. At this moment, a thunderous noise came from the light hundreds of meters away from Lu Ping. Lu Ping paused and saw a huge ball of lightning form in the direction of the noise. In Lu Ping's eyes, even the light of the 5 elements tortoise couldn't cover the dazzling color of this lightning ball within hundreds of meters. This was the method of the Yuan clan. Only the Yuan clan, which inherited the only lightning bloodline of Pongdaoren, could produce such a powerful lightning magic. A cyan light flashed across Lu Ping's eyes. As Lu Ping fused the 9 types of water together, the power of the 3 pure eyes grew stronger and stronger, while the cyan light in his eyes grew dimmer and dimmer. Hundreds of meters away, a figure stood motionlessly in the sky filled with lightning, while another figure was fleeing in a sorry state. It was none other than Yuan Jinglei. People of the Yuan clan, good, your Yuan clan has really done a good deed. Do you really think that the words left by Pongdaoren back then can bind my peacock race? The standing figure sneered. After saying that, a cyan light flashed out from the figure's back to instantly suppress the lightning. In the face of the cyan light, even the surrounding 5 elements tortoise paled in comparison. After breaking Yuan Jinglei's lightning magic, the figure did not get up to give chase. Instead, he suddenly turned to look at Lu Ping. His gaze pierced through the 5 elements tortoise, seemingly wanting to reach Lu Ping. Chapter 11:19. Spying on a great cultivator was obviously not something to be proud of, at least not now. Although Lu Ping had dodged quickly enough, the great cultivator of the Peacock clan obviously did not want Lu Ping to escape so easily. A green light broke through the 5 elements light and chased after Lu Ping. Lu Ping hurriedly looked behind him and saw that the great cultivator did not chase after him. He immediately breathed a sigh of relief. However, seeing the green light that followed him like a shadow, Lu Ping felt that it was best to wait for the great cultivator to get far away before dealing with it. Hey, brother Lu, what are you? Su Jin suddenly rushed out of the five elements light. Seeing that Lu Ping was being chased by a green light, he shook the long sword in his hand and rushed forward to help. Lu Ping hurriedly said, Brother Su, wait, wait. Yi Zhiqiu was now so regretful that he even wanted to die. In fact, at this time, he was indeed facing the threat of death. However, looking at the way he was running away, it was obvious that although he was regretful, he had not reached the point where he wanted to die. Behind him, a great cultivator of the peacock royalty was leisurely walking behind him. If it were not for the fact that Yi Zhiqiu was already at the middle Dharma stage and the five elements tortoise was blocking him, he would probably have been caught by this great cultivator by now. Since the last time Yi Zhiqiu kidnapped Yang Shujun and obtained the life plume feather from her, he could already sense that Mu Changsheng and Yuan Jinglei were alienating and wary of him. However, Yi Zhiqiu did not care and continued to work with the two of them to search for the whereabouts of the five peacock girls. After Yang Shujun lost her life plume, the five elements formation formed by the Yang clan sisters could still operate. However, with the addition of Yang Shujun, the five elements formation often collapsed. Almost every time it collapsed, it would cause a tide of vitality. Fortunately, Yang Huajun also had a spiritual treasure imitation of the Qinkuan wine cauldron that could be used to adjust the five elements' primordial qi. It had the same effect as the exquisite wine cauldron. Every time, the five sisters could safely escape from the essence qi tide. Perhaps it was because the five sisters were eager to improve their cultivation, or perhaps they were practicing some secret technique of the peacock race. Although they caused such a big commotion every time, the five sisters still persevered. Finally, after the five elements formation collapsed, they were blocked by Yi Zhiqiu and a few helpers. However, the five sisters were obviously not weak. After forming the five elements formation, they could even display the supreme magical power, the great five elements light, which was ranked second in the cultivation world. Even if Yang Shujun lost her life plume feather and Mu Changsheng had a deep understanding of the five elements formation, it was not easy for everyone to capture the five sisters. Of course, the most important reason was that the three of them and the cultivators under them were unwilling to use their full strength. They did not want to expose their identity or the sect behind them, which would bring them endless trouble. Therefore, the encirclement this time eventually allowed the five sisters to escape. However, the second vitality tide was about to arrive again. This time, the well-prepared crowd immediately circled the area and blocked the five sisters again. At this moment, a nightmare suddenly befell them. The three great cultivators of the peacock royalty suddenly appeared. Except for Mu Changsheng, Yuan Jinglei, and Yi Zhiqiu, the other cultivators who surrounded the five sisters were all killed by the three great cultivators. Orange Light Yi Zhiqiu, one of the 7 rainbow lights of the third-generation cultivators of the Lingyun Valley. How dare you? Do you really think the old man doesn't know who you are? Yi Zhiqiu's heart sank when he heard that, but the light under his feet sped up. Hand over the life plume feather, and the old man will spare your life. The edge of the five elements hidden tortoise was very close. Yi Zhiqiu was overjoyed. The five elements hidden tortoise was about to disappear. This was the time when the five elements fog outside the Taoist rite was the thickest. Moreover, Mara's army was hidden in the fog. Although it was dangerous, it was a good opportunity for Yi Zhiqiu to get rid of the people behind him. As long as he was not caught, the peacock royalty would not be able to prove that he was involved in this matter. The Lingyun Valley would not give in and would try to rescue and protect him. The great cultivator from the Peacock clan behind him clearly realized that the situation inside the five elemental fog was probably even worse than the situation inside the invisible dojo. As such, he could not help but increase his speed. Yi Zhiqiu, who was in front of him, suddenly took out a talisman and slapped it on his body. After a flash of light, the five elemental yuan qi around Yi Zhiqiu was suddenly isolated. Yi Zhiqiu stretched out his hand and drew a line in front of him. A spatial door immediately formed, and Yi Zhiqiu stepped into the spatial door. When he reappeared, he was already outside the five elemental fog. He actually dared to use the space magic in the invisible Taoist rite. What kind of talisman is this? I let him escape. The great cultivator came to the place where Yijichio was standing. The effect of the talisman suddenly disappeared. The 5 elements light that was pushed away immediately flowed back. Although it did not form a tide of qi, it was still extremely turbulent. However, the great cultivator just waved his sleeve casually, and the turbulent qi immediately disappeared. The rules of the wood element of Wuxing School really live up to their reputation. After Mu Changxing retreated for a distance, he saw that the other 2 Laozu and the 5 women from the Yang clan had not caught up to him. He actually stopped running. Instead, he turned around and fought with the great cultivator who was chasing him. He fought all the way to the edge of the 5 Elements dojo and successfully met up with a Ba turtle. Along the way, although Mu Changxing was always at a disadvantage, he was never completely suppressed. This made the great cultivator from the Peacock clan who was chasing after Mu Changxing exclaim in admiration. I don't know who you are talking about, but it sounds like you think I am a very powerful cultivator. Mu Changxing stood on the back of the Ba turtle and walked into the depths of the 5 elements fog. He turned around and said to the great cultivator who was standing at the edge of the Taoist Rite dojo. The great cultivator was not surprised by Mu Changxing's denial. He just smiled and did not chase into the 5 elements fog. Brother Xiang, it seems like the rumors are true. Even great cultivators do not dare to enter the 5 elements fog alone when the Taoist Rite dojo is closed. Mu Changxing said to the Ba turtle under his feet. On the other side of the Taoist Rite dojo, the great cultivator who was fighting with Yuan Jinglei earlier stood there. As he listened to Mara's howls in the 5 elements fog, he could not help but frown and say, "It seems like the way back is not going to be easy." Fortunately, the 5 girls are quite capable and managed to invite a Ba turtle. This way, it will be much easier for Mara, who has gone crazy because of the disappearance of the 5 elements dojo. At this moment, the great cultivator made a sound of surprise and turned to look in the other direction of the Taoist Rite dojo. He said, "This is interesting. I didn't expect that there would be so many young people with potential in the House of Tortoise this time. They are only at the early Dharma laws stage, but they are able to break through the old man's pursuing shadow sword." After saying that, he no longer cared about that direction and headed in another direction. The 5 elements Tortoise dojo trembled more and more violently. Lu Ping and Su Jin flew forward again for a while. Estimating that they had put enough distance between them and the great cultivator, Lu Ping then turned around and slashed at the green light that was chasing after them like a shadow. Amidst the clanging sound, although the green light slowed down, it still chased after Lu Ping. On the contrary, the thin water sword not only failed to hit the green light, but was also almost shaken off. Haha, Brother Lu, this is the famous supreme magical power of the peacock race. The pursuing shadow secret technique, and the person who attacked it seems to be a great cultivator. If you want to break this magical power so easily, aren't you taking it too lightly? Su Jin not only did not step forward to help, but looked at Lu Ping, who was forced into a somewhat embarrassing situation by the green light, with a smile. Lu Ping snorted coldly, and the Changlu sword was also unsheathed. After the 2 swords combined, they immediately displayed a sword light vortex. The power of the supreme magical power was enough to crush the green light in front of them, but this earth-shattering movement also forced Lu Ping and Su Jin to quickly leave the place. Brother Xiang. Not long after, the 2 of them finally found Xiang Shiping in his human form. At that moment, Xiang Shiping seemed to be in high spirits. Even his figure seemed taller and mightier. Clearly, he had gained a lot from this period of closed-door cultivation. Guys, the way back isn't as easy as coming here, because the sudden disappearance of the 5 elements tortoise will make the devil Luo hiding in the 5 elements fog outside the tortoise fall into madness. At that time, it won't be surprising if Azura attacks us. So, I think it's better for us to team up and rush out together. After seeing the 2, Xiang Shiping first said with a solemn expression. Lu Ping and Su Jin looked at each other, and Su Jin said with a smile, "Brother Xiang, I have heard a little about Mara going crazy because of the disappearance of the 5 elements Tortoise Dojo, but what about fellow Taoist Xiang Jingyu and another fellow Taoist who was born in the Yuan family? Didn't they agree to meet up and rush out of the Five Elements Tortoise Dojo together? Xiang Shiping shook his head and said, as soon as the two of them finished their closed-door training, they were called away by the person who invited them. As for the specific reason, old Xiang doesn't know. So now, only the three of us are left. To be honest, with just the three of us in the Five Elements fog, the danger is not small. In the Five Elements fog, Yijiqiu spat up blood. He looked at the 4 or 5 jade Mara surrounding him with despair in his eyes. In the distance, there were a few blood Mara eyeing him, and further away, there were dozens of Mara of different sizes blocking his escape routes. Why are there so many evil Luos gathered here? Is there a need to do this just to deal with me? Yijiqiu suddenly thought of this, and then he fell into complete darkness under the attack of a Jade Shura. The endless fog did not disappear with the disappearance of the Five Elements Tortoise Dojo. Only the sound of the rising and falling of the seawater could be heard. At this time, Yuan Jinglei suddenly broke through the fog and appeared there. At the same time, his eyes seemed to be looking for something. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.